Yes. Yes, hello.
Okay.
Hello, 3, 2, 1. One,
Yo.
two, three.
Okay, hold up.
Yo, shit be fucking up, dog. Scott's still chatting, so we're just
Tried
chilling.
using my PC, but it didn't work that well. So
I think I need to put my headphones on for this one. Shit. Shit. Yep. Put my motherfucking headphones on. Alright.
what's up?
Headphones. My big fat headphones, I love them.
So let's see the philosophy of space and time. Oh shit.
Metaphysics, yo, we're getting ready for tomorrow.
So
There's some stuff that I've got to cover that's
that's a good.
pretty jargon
That's a
heavy.
good idea
Pretty.
to do that for like a precursor for tomorrow.
Yep. That's why I did it. But there's some real like math heavy shit that I've got to read, and I don't even know if I understand it 100%. So you and me are gonna have to talk about it as I go.
That's cool. Yeah. Can you like show? Can you show stuff on video on this? Can you like show your screen, share screen
Oh,
a little bit?
I wish I could because I'm looking at Notepad right now, but it looks like I'm looking at the screen.
Okay.
Sweet chin.
It'll be hard to like talk about the. I mean, yeah, I don't know. We'll see. We'll figure it out.
It's like it'll say things like T symmetry, like
Okay.
time variant symmetry and stuff like that. That you have to understand, like mathematical functions in a topological space are said to be symmetrical when like values under the space fluctuate and change. So
Mm-hmm.
like there's that has to deal with like that type of theory of time. It's not easy. None of this stuff is easy, but that's why we've got to cover it because people think metaphysics is just goddamn like magic or something. But all roads lead to metaphysics. Anytime you're metaphysics is asking all the super general questions: time and space, causality, identity. The all of these things it's asking about. Whereas like physics, as I was telling Jack earlier, physics is asking the super specific reductionist ontological questions.
Sure.
Whereas metaphysics is asking not what space and time does or how it interacts or what is space and time a substance or is it something that acts upon matter, right? That's not a substance. It's just things that that shit is just contained within space. Or these things are what we're gonna cover. So
I gotcha. Yeah, like I mean, physics wants to ask a question that can be answered necessarily, and metaphysics is more abstract. And you said topological, kind of like
well,
topology.
well, yeah. Topology deals with metaphysics as well. No,
Isn't
I
that
was
like?
I was
Well,
repeating something I read and I don't remember it entirely.
I was just gonna ask. Isn't and yeah, maybe you don't know. Um, isn't that like a big thing with string theory and understanding how like the strings work and shit?
Yeah, the
They use a
strings
lot of
inside like the
like,
quarks and leptons and stuff. Yeah.
yeah, like topology or topology. I don't know how to pronounce that.
Yeah,
But
like
the geometry of it all.
the topology is just like, you can look at. Let me see if I can explain it. That'll be good for the show. So in it's a mathematical term. So like in mathematics, topology is concerned with the properties of a geometric object that are preserved under continuous deformations, such as stretching, twisting, crumpling, and bending. So if you have a mathematical topological space, it can all be still considered the same space, even if it's changed, right? Here's a good example. I wish I could post this. Fuck.
I know that's why I said kind of in the beginning, like if you could screen share it.
Ah,
Like
god
what
damn
if
it.
you did it? What if you like simultaneously shared your screen on Discord and did the show at the same time?
That would probably cause us issues. I don't even want to fuck with that.
Like on your computer. So,
I don't even know how I would do that. I'm
well,
not privy
you
to
know
how
how
I
on
would do that.
Discord, you could share your screen.
Yeah,
You've done it with me many times before.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm just saying perhaps you could simultaneously do that while you're doing the show, and if anyone wants to look at what you're
Would
looking
people
at.
have to be on Discord to see what I was showing though? I'm not.
Yeah,
I guess
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
confused.
yeah. Of course,
Okay,
that's all I'm saying.
okay. Well, most of the audience probably is not going to Discord. You know what I mean? So
Oh,
I
okay.
won't be able to. Some of the audience will be able to, like Travis and all them, can go to Discord and
Yeah,
watch.
I
But
mean,
yeah.
if it's at no cost, I'm just throwing it out there. It's not like you're.
Oh, if it's at no cost, not really. I mean, I just don't want to make it to where my bandwidth is lower or that we have any problems on
Sure,
call in. So I'm probably not going
sure.
to do that. So yeah, topology basically is any geometric object and it's preserved under continuous deformations. So like changing a sphere to a cube, the topology of that, I guess that system is still technically the same. It's just changed shape, geometric shape. So like that also deals with some topics in metaphysics, but really metaphysics is most easily understood as the most general, vague questions that we can ask about existence, whereas physics is concerned about the most specific,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
reductionist questions we can ask
reductio.
about the yes,
Yeah, for sure.
yep, and everything, all those vague ideas, causation, causality, identity,
Mm-hmm.
change, all this kind of stuff.
Oh yeah.
Uh, we have physics because somebody thought about the philosophy of space and time first before we started. Aristotle and Parmenides and all these people were thinking about the philosophy of space and time before physics was invented. You know what I mean?
Are you
Even
gonna?
though even though metaphysics means after physics, it's more like it more means like it's above physics. You know what I mean? It's the physics of physics is what that means.
Yeah, I'd say above is not as a good word too, though. But
Yeah,
um,
it's always the best to just say it's the physics of physics.
are
That
you
that is
gonna
that is what I've come across on the internet a lot.
are you gonna talk about Einstein at all?
Yes.
Nice. That will be an important one.
Your mic is so sensitive it sounds like you have a bag of chips on the microphone.
I'm rolling this joint right now. Can you still hear it right now?
No, no, not right now.
Here,
That was
I'm gonna
weird.
change this. I changed it to standard. Did that
Maybe it's
change
just
anything?
no. It still sounds about the same. Maybe it's just the
Okay.
sensitivity of my earphones on my.
Yeah, but
Maybe
you
it's
could
mine.
hear my joint that I'm rolling?
Yeah, it was some kind of like crumpling of paper. I thought you were like
This? Is it
eating out of
this?
a chip bag.
Is it this?
Yeah. Yes.
You hear that? That's crazy.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, you've got a very sensitive mic then, I guess.
I just have the normal earbuds that come with Apple. I switched it to voice isolation. Wonder if I could test it somehow. No, I
Good
can't.
question. I don't know.
Damn, that's crazy. Yeah, I'll be sure to mute and stuff when
No, you're fine. Like I
we're
didn't
doing the
hear it
show.
until you started messing with that. I didn't hear anything.
So what about this? since we're kind of on the top already.
Yeah.
You
I
hear
can
that?
hear that very little, yeah, but I can still hear it. Sounds like you're running your hand through a sack or something.
I was like throwing down my joint, kind of like packing it down to the bottom of it,
Yeah.
and you heard that. That's crazy. I need to find a poker.
A poker.
This will do.
I'm already hungry again, and I just started the show.
Yeah, I mean, you said bag of chips. That's your fault.
I did. That is my fault.
Do you like Takis? Like the spicy chili lime
I think I've had them
flavor?
maybe like one time. I don't remember what I thought of them,
Those things,
honestly.
bro. I'm freaking addicted.
Takis. Fuck yeah. Scott's show's still going on, so we're still just chilling.
Yeah, I'm chilling.
Gotta wait for his ass to end. Of course, that dude may stay with him for 3 hours, and then we're just gonna be an audience of 3.
Whatever. I don't mind that at all, actually.
Yeah, we can just chill.
So, what about what are some other names that you're gonna throw in there?
The Leibniz and Clarke argument about the philosophy of space and time,
Oh, yeah.
where he talked to
George
yeah,
Maxwell
George.
Clark.
Yeah, he talked to him, and Isaac Newton was writing through Clarke to talk to Leibniz. So it was a conversation between the three of them, basically.
Who else had one? It was Einstein, and it was some like more known as a Who was the guy that was it? Bergson? Let me see.
Look it up.
Einstein debate. Bohr. I think I
Yeah,
know
Niels
about
Bohr.
that one, but I'm thinking of another one.
Bohr's model of the atom. Isn't that right? Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be freaking. I mean, there's so much that you could talk about, honestly. So let's see. No, that's not it. Einstein debate. I mean, it might be it that I'm thinking of. I don't know. I'll do this. Bergson debate. We'll see if that was right. Yeah, Einstein and Bergson had a debate about the nature of time in 1922.
Yeah.
Bergson had, he had more of a metaphysical, like, I don't know. When does it go from metaphysical to physics?
When you start being specific. Instead of asking, is space and time made up of stuff, you've either decided that it is or it isn't. And once it is, you ask, well, how is it made up of stuff? What is it made up of? You know what I mean? Like,
So the
so,
axioms is a part of it, of the
yeah, I
specificity
mean,
of it, kind of?
yeah, like, it's so hard to explain metaphysics without sounding a little ridiculous. Because you're asking the most, like, I could go down the list again of all the different topics covered by metaphysics, but like, so the very idea of identity and identity over time and change over time is integral to all psychology. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Right.
I suppose it's something.
So,
It's an underlying like assumption that we all accept while we form our ideas and
like
stuff.
the identity of something, like you remember, like the change of Heraclitus compared to the
Parmenides,
Parmenidean
yeah,
monolith,
yeah.
right?
Flux versus change, or flux
Right.
versus static. Yeah.
Yes.
So what about that though?
I
What
lost it.
about
It's gone.
is that like? I mean, what criterion? Well, it was metaphysics to them. Well, it was physics to them, though. I don't know if they used that word. I don't know what word they used.
I
I
think
mean,
Aristotle was
nowadays,
the first one who did physics. You
yeah,
know.
physics and physics
Um,
too.
yeah. So
Okay.
you would have to know it. So it's like everything that can be asked about metaphysics draws a line to some science. Like, and they're all interconnected intersectionally. Like, when you talk about causality, like cause and effect is
Mm-hmm.
a metaphysical
True.
topic.
Yes.
So nothing in space-time can even be talked about without first understanding what is a cause, what are things that are effects, what are causes and effects together, can an effect precede a cause? These are all questions, metaphysical questions about causation.
Right.
So like,
Yet we still, we still use them when we're talking about physics, which is kind of like the link that I'm kind of asking about. Like, where is that line? If it could be, if it's even known, if it could be known, where
when
that
does
change,
metaphysics turn into physics?
yes.
I don't know if it's a direct thing like that. I don't know if I can draw direct lines.
Right. I doubt it personally.
I could go, if you want me to, I can go to my page and just look up all the different topics under metaphysics, and you can tell me what's important to you. So
Well, I'm of no authority
you've got
to.
obviously ontology, the state of being and existence and becoming and reality. All of that is a part of metaphysics, right? What is
Right. Yeah.
ontological?
Yeah.
Yeah. So then you've got identity and change. How does one thing remain itself over time in a degrading universe? Like all these questions. Then you got the philosophy of space and time. What is space and time? How is it related to each other? Are they different things? Are they the same thing? Then you've got causality itself, right?
Yep.
So there's other peripheral concerns like mind and matter, right? Determinism, indeterminism, uh, universals and particulars, the concept of what a number is, natural and social kinds of distinctions like Plato's Phaedrus.
I
In
just thought of
like
Plato when you said that. Yeah.
yeah, so like all of these are metaphysical questions and ideas, and they're from first principles.
Right.
Basically, you
Yep.
go from the cogito to metaphysics. You know what I mean? Like cogito, noticing the consistent relation of reality, then going to cogito, then going to logic, then going to metaphysics, asking all the general questions, right? And then focusing and focusing and focusing and getting to the sciences and getting to physics.
That's a pretty good ladder that you just laid out. I mean, that's a good answer to kind
Okay.
of what I was asking.
Right.
Yeah, first principles, axioms. Those are some crucial. I mean, foundation. Well, foundations is a metaphor
That's
in a
why they
sense,
call it
but
metaphysical grounding.
yeah,
When you're talking about something being grounded, or you have a philosophical foundation. That's what's called metaphysical grounding. So, like the idea of causality is metaphysically grounded in physics,
yeah.
because we can't do physics without causality,
I
right?
was
So
just thinking
causality
about
is a more vague question, but it's also almost in a way more important, and in some senses, I guess.
I was
Maybe
just
that's
thinking about
incorrect.
causality earlier today.
Yeah.
But
Thinking about causality. What were you thinking about?
just our past conversations that we'd have. Can we see it? Like, are there visuals that we can actually experience the cause, or do we just see the A and the B?
Hmm.
Um,
I don't know if
so
there ever was an A and a B. It's just us making the A and the B, right?
right, exactly, true.
Time is this gradient where people think it's like cut into pieces, and that's everything in reality is all just like these fields of gradients.
So, do we live in a 4D universe or a 9 dimension or a 13
4D would be
dimension?
like a block universe where time was the fourth dimension,
Right? Is that what we're
right?
in, or are we in something
Or so
different?
I guess in geometry the fourth dimension is like a tesseract, right?
That's what I initially thought, but I mean, and that's
Then
why
I've
some
also
people
heard
actually.
people, but I've also heard people say that. I've also heard the term fifth dimensional tesseract.
I was
I've
just
heard
going to
that
say
as well.
that. Yes, yes, including time.
So,
So four of space and one of time.
well, then space would have to be
Tesseract.
a direction itself. You know what I mean? In order for there to be like so, space time technically is linked as of the moment right now. Space time in the physical sense is linked. But most theoretical physicists think that there's more fundamental nature to space time. It's not actually that. People like Stephen Wolfram think that space and time are made up of space and time particles, like space particles.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's, and I may be not completely representing his views uh, amazingly well, but you get it. We had
Syncope
a show
asks,
on these guys, so
Syncope asks, "Are we talking about quantum leaps?" And he said he was told, or she was told. Well, I'm not sure. They were told, "Time is distance."
time is distance. Yeah, in classical mechanics, distance is equated with direction is equated with distance. So like length with height, um, and the fourth dimension being the fucking uh, curvature
Time.
of space time. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
which would
Oh,
be time.
okay.
Which would be time.
Gotcha.
Um, we're gonna get into Einstein's theory here in a little bit. We'll have some time. I'm surprised Scott's still going. I'm impressed.
Yeah, good. Good on him.
Good
It
on him.
makes me
Yeah.
think of something else when you said that space is completely based on whoever's view it was that you said that space is
Mhm.
completely comprised of space particles.
Yeah, it was Stephen Wolfram.
It also makes me think of our conversation of dividing everything by two. Like you could take a space particle and then you divide by two, all the way for like 1,000 times, and then
Hmm.
is there more space particles that are lesser
Yeah.
yet live in, like you get weird with it, and that's
In
obviously
in
metaphysics.
philosophy, we could say that that's us doing the dividing and not space time itself. But
True, true,
if we're being
true.
if we're being physicists, then we're going to say, yeah, we're reducing this and cutting it in half for infinity. You know.
Yes, I believe that if you had God's iPhone that you can keep zooming in by a two magnifier over and over and over and over, right? Like his camera would be high resolution enough to do that,
Yeah.
um, which would make those super small particles huge, right? Those particles would be huge relative to that,
Yeah.
and we're huge to those particles. And, yeah, I don't know.
Yep. Um, what else? I could go ahead and just start covering what I was going to cover, but I wanted
Yeah,
Scott to have time to finish his show and come in here.
we got a few people in here now.
Oh yeah, okay. Well, we'll start here in a minute. We'll start here in a second. I've just been babbling about fucking shit with Perry. Let's see. Read a little bit here before I get started. You want to? Well, uh, Honenheim's not in here. He must be in the other show.
Nivik said that they just finished.
Okay. All right. I texted him. It's all good. Sweet. Ah, yes. The philosophy of space and time. Woo, woo, woo. Oh, we got some people flowing in. Hell yeah. He just finished. Well, awesome. That was a really. I watched about 40 minutes of it, and then I had to go read some shit. But that was a really good discussion about leadership with Scott and Mike. Did you get to catch any of that, Perry?
No, not really. I had to do the job I was doing.
Super badass, like Navy SEAL kind of guy, uh, teaching people about good leadership and basically just performing to your full potential as a leader and a follower and all that kind of stuff. It was really cool dude.
Nice.
Yeah, I thought it was cool for sure. Okay, so we're gonna get to me and Perry lecture, and I wanted to let Scott get in here too because I know he'll want to fucking throw his 2 cents in, and we'll get everybody up here in a little while after you and me tackle this shit for just a little bit. So, everybody, love you. Thank you for coming. Tonight, we're going to talk about the philosophy of space and time. We're going to talk about metaphysics, right? It's a part of the philosophy of space and time. Um, well, no, excuse me. I'm a little stoned. I'm sorry, guys. Metaphysics comprises things like necessity and possibility, identity and change, causality, cause and effect. And then one of those other things is the philosophy of space and time, which is explaining what and how time is on a very general and very vague sense. Like, is it a substance? Is it not a substance? We'll get into that in just a second. But uh, I figured I would do this episode tonight because we're going to have Kraus tomorrow on the show, and I want to be able to at least not sound like a complete moron when I'm trying to talk physics with him, because obviously he's one of the most brilliant physicists out there, at least one of the ones that we know about. Uh, so I want to be able to at least have some questions to ask him about this and maybe the philosophy of science, but mostly I'm just going to want to stay on physics and his books and stuff and what he wants to talk about, because he's kind of a special guest. So we don't want to jump on him and, like, climb on uh, you're uh, you talk as if you actually know everything and it's true, because Lawrence Krauss is one of these people who's like, I would probably call a structural realist, which is somebody who thinks that the scientific models that we make and construct in reality actually do give us glimpses into the realness of existence. You know what I mean? Whereas, like, I'm more of a constructive empiricist or a constructivist in this philosophy of science. I think a little bit differently than he does. So uh, we won't be getting into any of those controversies with
Oh, you
Krauss.
should. That would be very
Well, I
interesting
might I
at
might
the
bring up
end. Yeah.
some. Well, yeah, I might bring up some of the philosophy of science issues, and I may even talk about some of the stuff we're about to talk about here tonight. But I'm mainly going to try to keep it around the physics shit, just because it's Lawrence Krauss,
Yeah.
guys. Come
Of
on.
course.
But all right, so just after that general explanation, I'm always trying to cite my sources for these things: Wikipedia, Stanford Encyclopedia, Oxford, a couple of other web pages I went to. I can't remember. I copied, pasted, paraphrased all this mishmash together. So just follow with me here. Um, so the philosophy of space and time is the branch of philosophy and metaphysics concerned with the issues surrounding the ontology and epistemology of space and time. While such ideas have been central to the philosophy since while such ideas have been central to philosophy from its inception, the philosophy of space and time was both an inspiration for and a central aspect of early analytic philosophy. The subject focuses on a number of basic issues, including whether time and space exist independently of the mind, whether they're anti-real, whether they exist independently of one another, what accounts for time's apparently unidirectional flow, where it flows in one direction, whether times other than the present moment actually exist, and questions about the nature of identity and time over time and what that means. So we could go over some of the stuff, like how the Vedas and the Incas and like Plato and all these people thought about the ancient and medieval views of the philosophy of space and time. And I think some of that actually probably Perry, I bet you ran across some of it in St. Augustine's Confessions, didn't you?
What was that about time? Did Augustine have some notions of time? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, he would. It says in Book 11 of St. Augustine's Confessions, he reflects on the nature of time, asking, quote, "What then is time? If no one asks me, I know. If I wish to explain it to one who asks, I know not." Quote.
Interesting. Yeah, I think him and Aquinas were definitely the two of the greatest Christian minds.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't, and he was very influenced by Aristotle. Augustine was. So
Yeah, big
I'm
time.
I'm I'm sure that a lot of his thought was subsequent
Mm-hmm.
from Aristotle, as was most thought.
Yeah, at that time, yeah. I mean, there were hardly any people on the earth. You know what I'm saying? Shit got around, especially over there on the European continent. So Let's see. We could talk about the Muslim ideology of space and time. We can talk about the theological, like Christian idea of space and time. All this stuff's included in like the medieval views and ancient views and other things. But we're going to focus more on like Western philosophy because I enjoy uh, Dharmic traditions philosophy. I really do. But I want to focus on these talks on Western philosophy and analytical philosophy. Sometimes I dive into the continental, existentialism, phenomenology, Hegel's dialectics. All that's really cool shit. Definitely is worth studying. But I like to stay in the analytical realm. So we're going to talk Western philosophy. First, we're just going to go into, and this is the same old argument Perry's heard a billion times, realism and anti-realism in terms of space and time. So of course we know realism means in philosophy is a term that's all over philosophy. Realism just means mind independent, and anti-realism means mind dependent. That's it. That's the definition. So a traditional realist position in the ontology of space and time is that space and time have existence apart from the human mind. Idealists, by contrast, deny or doubt the existence of objects independent of the mind. Some anti realists, whose ontological position is that objects outside the mind do exist, nevertheless doubt the independent existence of space and time. So take that in for a moment. There are realists and there are anti realists about space and time. So we can look at Immanuel Kant, right? We can look at his transcendental idealism and what he says in his critique of pure reason. Uh, I would say one of the pivotal works in the philosophy of space and time, at least from what I've read, of his time, 1780s, he describes time as a priori, and that together with other a priori notions, such as space, it allows us to comprehend sense experience. So Kant holds that neither space nor time are substance, entities in themselves or things in themselves, or learned by experience. He holds rather that both are elements of a systematic framework we use to structure our experience. So he would be a little bit more in the philosophy of science, like an anti-realist like me, just a little bit, just leaning a little bit into the anti-real. Sounds like he would argue for like transcendental idealism, but he would also say, yeah, I can see how constructivism works as well because he didn't throw out the empirical. He was one of those idealists who was like, yeah, the empirical is totally in not in conflict with what I believe, so it's fine. Um, so Kant had a weird. He had spatial measurements are used to quantify how far apart objects are, and temporal measurements are used to quantitatively compare the interval between those events. Interesting. So all those space and time are held to be transcendentally ideal in this sense, that is mind dependent. They are also empirically real. This is like I was saying, Kant could have his cake and eat it too. He could say, well, yeah, those appearances of everything, these ideas, we can do empiricism and science through that. So he was basically saying, yeah, everything's ideas, but we can trust those things to be empirical, right? So that's why Schopenhauer had the what was Schopenhauer's critique of Kant's uh, anti-realist subjective idealist ideology.
Oh, jeez, I have no idea.
Pretty sure he said it was something like, the thing in itself is a fortress that you can never get inside of. So why would you even try to attack the walls, right?
Schopenhauer said that.
Yeah. The noumena is basically a fortress off on an island which nobody can get to, and there's no reason to assault that fortress, right? Like he
Yeah.
had some weird. I can't remember exactly what it is. I need to look it up and stop just blabbing out my ass.
Well, I
But
know that the idea of like a room with only one small window is an idea that I hear a lot paired with Kant. We have
mm-hmm,
this small window, and then we're blocked out other than the small window. And how
mm-hmm,
you said it, I agree completely. It seems as though that he was trying to like unify anti-realism and realism,
mm-hmm,
where, as you said, the spatial matters of things are is what is mind independent, but the temporal aspect of it, the time, is mind is mind dependent,
Yeah,
where
he
it's our
says
mind putting those
he
temporal ideas on it.
yes, he's saying, quote again, although space and time are held to be transcendently ideal, like idealistic transcendentally in this sense, that is, they are mind dependent, they are also empirically real. That is, according to Kant, uh, a priori features of experience are not just subjective, but they can be used in the empirical method, right? So, transcendental idealism is the biggest example of having your cake and eating it too. And I kind of
Yes.
like it. You know what I mean? I kind of like it because it doesn't deny that we can't escape our phenomenology, but it also doesn't deny the empirical. It's like, Kant, you smart son of a bitch. But
It
it also makes me laugh too, because it's like, we can't. All of this stuff is just idealism. You know what I mean? How can we prove any of this stuff that he's talking about?
hence what you just said about Schopenhauer. Like, there's no
Yeah,
point since we can't get out.
yeah.
Um,
We're in the
and
matrix. We have to operate by the matrix's rules. What do we care about what's actually real if
I,
we can't get out,
I don't
right?
think it was I don't think it was intellectually dishonest either, as perhaps it seemed at first when first learning about Kant, of
Yeah.
having his cake and eating it too. It seems very. I memean, he seems like a structuralist himself. Let's keep in mind. Perhaps that's the bias that we need to put on him.
You mean
He
philosophical?
philosophical structuralist, yes,
Okay, yeah,
yes, where he's. I mean, he just seems very. I don't know. Structured is the best word that I can use. I'm trying to think of a synonym, but
I
yeah,
don't know of a more
philosophically,
structured man than Immanuel Kant. He was like
right. Yeah,
obsessive about structure.
yeah. He would take a walk at the same time every day, and people would tune their watches to the time of day since they knew what time it was when they saw him walking, since he was such on the dot with it.
Yeah,
Um,
that's the kind of person he was.
Schopenhauer liked his walks too, as a fun fact. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah. It's funny them going back and forth about it, but I mean, if transcendental idealism is true, then we can trust these appearances in our phenomenology to be empirically real. I don't care if space and time is transcendentally ideal. It may as well be real to me. It may as well be mind independent to me, because that's what I'm perceiving. So I don't know. I'm sure Tart could come in here and tear me to pieces about transcendental idealism, but I'm looking at it through a lower resolution lens uh, than some people do. So I'm just, I don't worship Kant. I don't worship transcendental idealism. I entertain it. I like to think about it all the time and
you have to.
consider, that might be the actual case of a matter of affairs.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you can't ignore it because it makes a ridiculous amount of sense. But
If I may, real quick before you carry
yeah,
on,
please,
Nivik
please.
says, "What is a priori?" Nivik, I swear you've been in these conversations so many times. But if I could steel man what Kant supposedly means by a priori here, it's simply something that we're born with, and we have this type of structure or instinct or something ingrained in us that help us perceive the world. I mean, Kant had like 13
Yeah,
a priori's
categories.
or something, but that's essentially what he's kind of taking. Like, it's something that is just within us, innate,
Yeah.
that helps us understand and perceive.
Hmm.
I don't
He
know
was also
if
talking
you
about. Yeah, he was also talking about rationalistic thought. You know what I mean? He
yeah
was talking about a priori to Kant also meant that induction and deduction were the ways that you. I mean, since everything was ideal, since everything else was mind dependent, like all of that other shit was mind dependent as well, right? There was no mind independence, even though there were the
right
things in
yeah.
themselves. It wasn't mind independent. I mean, I guess that the Numina was mind independent, but I'm not really sure
There are assumptions
how he
because
thought about it.
we're trapped inside. So I mean,
Yeah,
they
yeah,
are
it was.
assumptions.
Yeah, he calls it transcendentally ideal, but we don't know. Anyway, let's move past Kant because he is not the final say all in what space and time is.
Dude,
Um,
it went really well. I was
let's see
so
if there's
fucking
an important
nervous, but
part
it
that I'm
like
missing in
fucking
my
turned out really
notes.
good.
They're all over the place too. Okay, yes.
Yeah,
We also know
yeah,
that
very fucking straight up, just clear.
most of the,
Yeah, dude, good dude, solid dude.
technically Kant was a realist. Technically, right? because he
Yep.
said that they are empirically real. These appearances in our mind are empirically real. They can
Yeah,
give us
the
empirical.
noumena side of him was a realist, and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
the
So
phenomena
so
side of him wasn't.
Yep.
so in space and time,
Yep.
with in terms of the noumena, he was a realist, right?
Yes, but I mean, he
Okay.
has his cake and he eats it too, and
Yeah.
and he knows about the phenomena issue.
Right.
So
Yeah.
this is why I said in the beginning, it's like he's trying to bond, he's trying to marry these two ideas with his transcendentalism. Um,
I've heard of
Son
it
of a
before,
bitch.
but
All right, now we get to the meat
I'm
and
not
bones. Are you
totally
ready for
familiar with
Leibniz
it.
and Newton?
Like I've
I know
heard of it.
you are.
yeah, let's do it.
I know
What's up,
you are.
Scott?
Ooh, Scott's here. Scott,
Yeah.
dude, your show, man, was awesome. I got to catch about 30 minutes
Yeah.
of it before I had to go study a little bit and make my show.
Um,
But yeah, that was excellent. How did it end up? That dude seemed like a really nice guy. Seemed like a really, really kind person. Yeah, we get a lot of good people on here who are actually really good people. You know what I mean? So that's awesome. So we are talking about Scott. We're talking about the philosophy of space and time. We talked about Immanuel Kant's ass having his cake and eating it too, with transcendental idealism, and talking about how he perceived time. Uh, that's basically where we're at in the conversation. Now we're about to talk about what the difference between absolutism and relationalism. So this is a conversation between Gottfried Leibniz and Samuel Clarke and Isaac Newton. Have you heard of that, Scott? It's okay. I just learned about I knew that Isaac and him had conversations, but I didn't know that that Isaac Newton had a spokesperson that he sent to talk to, like to do this communication with Leibniz with. So it's called the Leibniz Clarke correspondence letters. Um, so the debate between absolutism is basically space and time. It's it's the great debate between defining notions of space and time as real objects themselves, which is absolute, or mere orderings upon actual objects, which is relational. So if you think about it like, uh, let's see if I can explain it. Um, from what I get from this, the absolute, and there's a whole paragraph on this that I copied and pasted from Stanford. So just give me a moment to rationalize this out for all of us. Um, Absolutism is that space and time are real objects themselves, whereas relationalism is that it says here that they are mere orderings upon actual objects. So they're relational. So space and time just being, I guess, an order upon actual objects, whereas like the objects as in atoms and gluons and quarks and everything, that 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 these objects are inside of whatever space and time is, instead of, like, Stephen Wolfram thinks that space and time are made of space atoms and time atoms and like all this kind of stuff. He's got, and because he thinks everything is computation. Of course, there's people who think the dark photon makes up dark matter and dark energy. Uh, let's read a little bit more because I didn't 100% understand that definition. So let's go on further on this Stanford page. Arguing against the absolutionist position, Leibniz offers a number of thought experiments which propose of which the guys, goddamn. Leibniz offers God. There's so many words that are hard to say here, and there's some names that are hard to say here too. Leibniz offers a number of thought experiments with the purpose of showing that there is a contradiction in assuming the existence of facts such as absolute location and velocity.
Yeah.
So that's cool that Leibniz was actually thinking about that back then. That's kind of crazy. Um, these arguments trade heavily on two principles central to his philosophy, which I use these two principles all the time. One is the principle of sufficient reason, which is it holds that for every fact there is a reason that is sufficient to explain what and why the way it is. So for every cause, there must be a sufficient reason for that cause to happen in order for an event to happen. Then everything that basically, here's the simplest way to say it: principle of sufficient reason is everything that begins to exist or everything that exists has a cause for its existence. That's basically what it is. That was Leibniz. He also had the theory of the identity of indiscernibles, which is basically if you can't tell two things apart, then they're the same thing. If you have no way of empirically telling the two things apart, they're basically the same thing. Um, so the example Leibniz uses involves two proposed universes situated in an absolute space, where space is real objects themselves. The only discernible difference between the two universes is that one of them is positioned 5 feet to the left of the first universe. So the example is only possible if such a thing as absolute space exists. Such a situation, however, is not possible according to Leibniz. For if it were, a universe's position in absolute space would have no sufficient reason, as because it could be arbitrary wherever it is in space. The placement is arbitrary. So it defies his principle of sufficient reason. Also, it defies his identity of indiscernibles to say that there could exist two distinct universes that were in all ways the same but different. So that would contradict the identity of indiscernibles. That's the arguments that he gave to Newton about this. So I'm kind of understanding a little bit. Perry, can you help me formulate a question here that we can understand what maybe even you look it up a little bit and help me here, and let's see what the difference between
So it seems
absolutism and relationalism.
Yeah, let's see what absolute space is right here. It seems like
type in absolutism and relationalism.
Okay.
Yes, please. Thank you.
From Stanford, probably.
Mm-hmm. So,
Okay. Well, I will glance over this more so, of course. But just some of my first thoughts. Indiscernibilism. So, actually, let's take the first one, sufficient reason.
Mm-hmm. Principle of sufficient reason, yeah.
It seems as though more premises have to be made here, and perhaps you did within the debate. But, everything has a sufficient cause. That's great and all. Again, we can now step into this whole issue of causality itself. It seems as though he's got causality all figured out, and he's putting it in his premise that two things. Again, this just seems like this could be accurate in a world where things are mind dependent, where it's just our mind that is sorting two things out, and then we're seeing the first A, and then we're seeing the cause of it leading to B, even though we're not actually seeing the cause. That's the whole argument. It just seems, in that now we step to the indiscernibleism.
Identity of indiscernibles, yeah.
If the second universe has something that is 5 feet to the left,
it's the same universe layered over the top of the first one, just 5 feet to the left.
Then it's it's not the same universe then, of course.
But in I don't know why he said this, but it says, so according to Leibniz, if it were, a universe's position in absolute space would have no sufficient reason, as it might very well have been anywhere else arbitrarily.
Oh, okay. So arbitrarily, there's just this object. Yeah, it just seems like he's not really. He's giving a very. What a weird. I'm sure this is all perhaps a little paraphrased to shorten it up and help us understand, and perhaps there's more to this. More premises, maybe, I don't know. But it just seems like it would break the law of identity if the second universe layered over the first one has something that is different and distinguishable, keyword different and distinguishable, from the first universe that would.
Okay, so layered might have been my paraphrasing. I'm looking at
Oh,
looking
okay.
at
Well,
this on the
still,
screen now. Okay, so it
regardless.
says the only discernible difference between the two universes is that the latter is positioned 5 feet to the left of the first. So that technically means they're not overlaying each other. I think I said that. I'm probably incorrect about that.
So right,
So
they're
yeah,
overlapping by a lot, but not
right.
100%.
But if you can't tell the two universes apart because they're both absolute space, I
Oh,
guess
I
is
see.
what
Okay,
Leibniz is
I
saying.
see. The absolute space.
Because
So
yeah,
then
it's
it's not
saying
absolute space.
real objects themselves and their ordering upon actual objects. Okay, I'm just trying to understand this absolutism and relationalism a little bit
Right.
more deeply here.
That might be where it
Um,
turns into relationalism when it doesn't overlap.
yeah, because relationalism is just a quote, a mere ordering upon actual objects. Quote.
Rotational phenomena. So they're
Yeah,
trying
go ahead.
they're trying to address the issue of rotational phenomena. The bucket argument showed that the effects of rotational motion could not be accounted for by means of motion of the water relative to its immediate surroundings, the
Hmm.
bucket walls. So, okay.
Oh, the bucket argument. That's Clark. Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's go to Clark's argument, and maybe
Yeah.
this will help us understand Leibniz's view. So, standing out in Clark's and Newton's response to Leibniz's argument is the bucket argument. They say water in a bucket hung from a rope and set to spin will start with a flat surface. As the water begins to spin in the bucket, the surface of the water will become concave. If the bucket is stopped, the water will continue to spin, and while the spin continues, the surface will remain concave. The concave surface is apparently not the result of the interaction of the bucket and the water, since the surface is flat when the bucket first starts to spin. It becomes concave as the water starts to spin, and it remains concave as the bucket stops. In this response, Clark argues for the necessity of the existence of absolute space to account for phenomena like rotation and acceleration that cannot be accounted for on a purely relationalist account.
I mean, it just seems like, are they disregarding inertia? I mean, of course it's still going to be
So
concave as
Leibniz
far.
is taking yeah, I guess they are, but Leibniz is taking the relationalist approach,
Okay.
and Clark and Newton are taking the
Oh, yeah,
absolutionist.
right below it. It says yeah. Okay. It says two interpretations of Mach on inertia. So yeah, they talked about inertia. Mach heavy, Einstein, relations to. No, we don't want that.
No, just
Okay.
go study well, I was going to say, ask ChatGPT the difference between absolutism and relationalism
Actually, I haven't
in the
used that
philosophy
yet.
of space and time.
What do I
Have you
do?
never used it?
I've just seen videos of people using it. I mean, I've seen so many. GPT-4, I'm assuming, is that what it is?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And I can
Or
just,
wait a minute, this one's called chat.openai.com.
Chat.open.
I'm really kind of interested in this right now.
OpenAI.
Ask it a real specific question. Ask
I
it.
gotta sign up. So let me sign up for a little bit.
Yeah, take your time. Take your time. All right, so let's continue the bucket argument here. It says, in this response, Clark argues for the necessity of the existence of absolute space to account for phenomena like rotation and acceleration that cannot be accounted for on a purely relationalist account. Clark argues that since the curvature of the water occurs in the rotating bucket as well as in the stationary bucket containing spinning water, it can only be explained by stating that the water is rotating in relation to the presence of some third thing, which is absolute space. That's
So
interesting.
maybe there, someone here, I still don't know who, is pairing inertia with some third entity.
Yeah, absolute space is that third entity, is what it said here.
Because it's still moving, even though the bucket, I mean, they've had to have known about inertia since.
Well, I mean, that was Newton and Leibniz were the beginnings of physics, so I don't know if they knew about inertia. Well, maybe they came up with the equations that describe inertia. I don't know. That's a history of mathematics question there for you.
Let's see.
Let me hit this vape real quick, guys. We're just chilling, everybody. How y'all doing out there? Y'all enjoying yourselves? I love you. Love you, Travis. Love you, Nivet.
Is Scott there? Yeah, I think it
Scott's there.
started. I think it started, honestly, maybe with Newton.
It did? Okay.
I think so.
Okay. So, what can we take away from this bucket analogy in absolute space? That's what I kind of want to.
Yeah, it's a good question.
to
Well, a part of me wants to bring up what we were talking about earlier, like where does metaphysics turn into physics? And this
seems like it's
an event that is going from more vague, abstract ideas to all right. Well, let's get reductio real quick, and let's define our terms. Maybe let's get some axioms going. Let's call this inertia and see if it works, and we'll go from there, right? I mean, we blunder our way to truth. We got to get a lot of things wrong in order to figure if truth is a thing, of course.
Right. Closer to the truth. We'll say that. How's that sound?
So we're getting more narrow, it seems, from events like this. And I don't know if you're going chronologically. It seems like perhaps you are.
Let's look up. Let's see what absolute space says on Wikipedia here. Just look up. Absolute space and time is a concept in metaphysics and philosophy about the properties of the universe. In physics, absolute space and time may be a preferred frame of reference. So Newton, originally introduced by Sir Isaac Newton in the Principia Mathematica, the concepts of absolute time and space provided a theoretical foundation that facilitated Newtonian mechanics. According to Newton, absolute time and space, respectively, are independent aspects of objective reality.
So he was
independent. They're independent. Yes, so they were independent aspects of objective reality. So that means that they were. That means that they were. Does that mean that they were properties of objective reality? That space and time were I guess he says independent aspects.
I didn't know there was another step outside of objective. I thought objective was the outside already.
It sounds like some Platonic idealism, doesn't it?
I guess. I mean,
let me read that sentence again. It says, according to Newton, absolute time and space, respectively, are independent aspects of objective reality. I guess I could read his quote. Okay, here we go. It says, according to Newton, absolute time exists independently of any perceiver and progresses at a consistent pace throughout the universe. Unlike relative time, Newton believed absolute time was imperceptible and could only be understood mathematically.
Okay.
But that doesn't still tell us what relationalism, I guess, is just Leibniz's view. I guess that's just what his view was that the universe, the two universes next to each other had the exact same properties, were the same universe, and therefore, well, you remember that I brought it up a minute ago. The two things that it broke his principles for sufficient reason, and it broke the identity of indiscernibles. So,
he was just
it says
some premises.
Yeah. And again, for the audience, the identity of indiscernibles is it just basically says if there's no way of telling two entities or objects apart, then they are basically one and the same thing. Of course, that would require us to be omniscient. We would have to know every possible property and predicate of an object in a system or a space, in a systematic space. So I mean, He's assuming a lot. Leibniz is putting a lot on his shoulders there with that argument. But I don't really understand the need for it. I guess this is why we move past this. Maybe.
Thomas.
No, go ahead.
I typed in chat IO or whatever it's called for the first time.
Yeah.
I said, what is absolute space and relational space? Absolute space and relational space are two concepts in physics that describe different ways of understanding nature of space. Pretty much everything that you've been saying. Absolute space refers to the idea that space exists independently of any objects or matter within it. According to this concept, space has its own inherent properties, like you were saying, and structure that remain constant.
Yeah, so space particles and time particles. Right, gotcha.
And he's bringing up Isaac Newton and Einstein, yada yada, for relativity.
Yeah, we're gonna get to Einstein
gonna get
next.
to
We're gonna
that, yeah.
cover.
Yep.
So don't go too hardcore on the absolute versus relational uh, dichotomy here, because it's um, let's see. Let's read this last part here. It says Leibniz describes a space that exists only as a relation between two objects, or between objects, and which has no existence apart from the existence of those objects. Motion exists only as a relation between those objects. Newtonian space provided the absolute frame of reference within which objects can have motion. In Newton's system, the frame of reference exists independently of the objects contained within it. So basically what you just said. So the frame of reference of time and space are separate entities from like the objects and the shit and matter and energy inside of it, is what I'm getting from this. Is that what you're getting? Harry?
Yeah, yeah, not a bad thought either. I mean, if you think about it like that, I can definitely see how we were led from those kinds of thoughts to where we are now. And though they sound silly, I mean, they were. I start thinking about the 4D and 5D. Like there's a dimension of time, and I mean, it seems like Leibniz and them were thinking, oh, there's a dimension of space or properties that are independent of space. You know, however you want to word it.
So we'll say this last part again. In Newton's system, the frame of reference exists independently. So the frame of reference he's referencing here, he's saying, I'll reword it for you. In Newton's system, the philosophy of space and time exists independently of the objects contained within space and time. So space and time are things. They're not just relational to matter and energy. It's not just I don't really know how to explain that in a way that wouldn't sound ridiculous. So it says these objects that are contained within this system can be described as moving in relation to space itself. So for almost 2 centuries, the evidence of the bucket argument, the concave water surface, held authority. That's crazy. So let's.
Yeah, probably didn't change until you know who. When you're the guy
Well,
you're
we're
both
about
talking
to hit. We're gonna hit Mach first, and then that's funny. We'll hit Mach 1 first. We'll hit Mach first, and then I think it's Mach, and then we'll hit Einstein. So another important figure in this debate is the 19th century physicist Ernst Mach. Ernst Mach. While he did not deny the existence of phenomena like that seen in the bucket argument, he still denied the absolutionist conclusion by offering a different answer as to what the bucket was rotating in relation to. Quote unquote, the fixed stars. Let's see what he means by that. Okay. In astronomy, the fixed stars are the luminary points, mainly stars that appear not to move relative to one another against the darkness of the night sky in the background. Okay, so just star formations, astronomy. Mach suggested that thought experiments like a bucket argument are problematic. If we were to imagine a universe that only contains a bucket, on Newton's account, this bucket could be set to spin relative to absolute space, and the water it contained would form the characteristic concave surface that they showed. But in the absence of anything else in the universe, it would be difficult to confirm that the bucket was indeed spinning. It seemed equally possible that the surface of the water in the bucket would remain flat. And this is of course before Einstein, so take this with a grain of salt. Mach argued that in effect the water experiment in an otherwise empty universe would remain flat. But if another object were introduced into this universe, perhaps a distant star, then there would now be something relative to which the bucket could be seen as rotating. Because otherwise in space, rotation means nothing, with no, point of reference to see. It'd be like it being in a sensory deprivation chamber. What's up? What's down? Anyway, let's move on to Einstein. Okay, we're gonna jump to Einstein real quick. Do you have anything to say, Barry or Scott?
Nope. Go for it.
Scott, what you doing? You playing chess? Don't lie to me, Scott.
Scott's riding the high of his dope live that he just did.
He's ignoring me, and I'm so upset. I'm a little butthurt. I will get you at some point. All right, let's go to Einstein, guys. Thanks you for sticking with the lecture. We're an hour in, and I still haven't gotten everywhere because some of this is so math heavy and term heavy that it's going to be difficult to completely get into it. All right, so let's talk about Einstein. It says Albert Einstein proposed the laws of physics should be based on the principle of relativity. You know this. The principle holds that the rules of physics must be the same for all observers, regardless of the frame of reference that is used, and that light propagates at the same speed in all reference frames. This theory was motivated by Maxwell's equations, which show the electromagnetic waves propagate in a vacuum at the speed of light. However, Maxwell equations give no indication of what this speed is relative to. Prior to Einstein, it was thought that the speed was relative to a fixed medium called the luminiferous ether. In contrast, the theory of special relativity postulates that light propagates at the speed of light in all inertial frames and examines the implications of this postulate. So this is going to get math heavy. If you want to know more, I'll be honest with you, just for this show, we'll go through a little bit more, but you really need to go study Einstein's theory of relativity. There's a really good Wikipedia article on it. It's well sourced. You need to go look it up, guys. Anybody listening to this in the future or now, definitely need to go look into Einstein's theory of relativity and how it deals with time and space, how the warping of space-time happens, and how general relativity gives us an idea of gravity at a large scale, and special relativity gives us an idea of how matter and energy are the same thing, and how time is relative to the speed of light. All this stuff is wonderful to learn. It may be debunked in 50 years, and we'll have a new space time. We'll have a new space time paradigm that we use, and it won't be relativity. But maybe anyway. It says, let's go on just a little bit more. It says all attempts to measure any speed relative to this either failed, which can be seen as a confirmation of Einstein's postulate that light propagates at the same speed in all reference frames. Special relativity is a formalization of the principle of relativity that does not contain a privileged inertial frame of reference, such as the luminiferous ether or absolute space, from which Einstein inferred that no such frame exists. So Einstein didn't think of this third thing of the luminiferous ether or the absolute space. He didn't think about it that way. Einstein generalized relativity to frames of reference that were non-inertial. He achieved this by postulating the equivalence principle, which states that the force felt by an observer in a given gravitational field, and that felt by an observer, okay, try this again. He achieved this by positing the equivalence principle, which states that the force felt by an observer in a given gravitational field and that felt by an observer in an accelerating frame of reference are indistinguishable. Okay, so this led to the conclusion that the mass of an object warps the geometry of the space-time surrounding it as described in Einstein's field equations. So we know that. All right, so it said Einstein generalized relativity. In classical physics, an inertial reference frame is one in which an object that experiences no forces does not accelerate. In general relativity, an inertial frame of reference is one that is following a geodesic of spacetime. An object that moves against a geodesic experiences a force. An object in freefall does not experience a force because it is following a geodesic. An object standing on the Earth, however, will experience a force as it is being held against the geodesic by the surface of the planet. Let's look up geodesic. I know what he means, but I want a real definition for it. Geodesic. Relating to or denoting the shortest possible line between 2 points on a sphere. Gotcha. So, Einstein particularly advocates Mach's principle in that distant stars explain inertia because they provide the gravitational field against which acceleration and inertia can occur. But contrary to Leibniz's account, this warped space-time is an integral part of an object, as are its other defining characteristics such as volume or mass. If one holds, contrary to idealist beliefs, that objects exist independently of the mind, it seems that relativistics commit one to also hold that space and time have exactly the same type of independent existence. So let me read that again. If one holds, comma, contrary to idealistic beliefs, comma, that objects exist independently of the mind, like we physicalists do, it seems that the relativistic notions commits one to hold the idea that space and time have exactly the same type of independent existence, so that they are also mind independent. Right? What do you
Yeah,
think, Perry?
I, the only thing that I would, and I really don't want to make the semantic argument, right?
I mean, you can. Go ahead.
It also makes sense if how he was explaining it. It also makes sense if space is the only thing that's mind independent, and time we're tacking on to that space,
Mm-hmm.
and now we're claiming, since I'm not an idealist and we have time, that means that time exists independently. I don't know. I think I need more meat,
Mm-hmm.
perhaps. It seems like we could still live in a world where just because space acts this way, and it changes, right? Like the more gravity there, or the more matter, the less time expended, or light
Yes.
has trouble escaping. The whole spiel. That makes sense if that's just all space and us monkey brains. We
Mm-hmm.
put things in integrals and we create a and b in times. Uh,
Yeah.
I don't think that we can necessarily go ahead and say time exists independently of us.
So modern physicists consider it space-time.
Right,
You know what I
right.
mean?
That's the same
But then
thing.
there's but
Yeah.
then there's theoretical physicists who say that space-time is nonsense and relativistic laws break down. That's string theory and all this kind of stuff. Even other views. I've read on Science Daily the other day that there are many theoretical physicists working at MIT to try to figure out what this more fundamental force or field could be from which space-time emerges. And I mean, like Perry, is space a thing, or is it just what a, is it just what allows matter and energy to change? Is space a thing?
Uh, I think the space, rather than space and time being the same, I think the matter and energy is the space. Those are the same thing. I
Okay.
don't.
So the space. Okay. So right. Okay. Yeah.
I don't think that they are distinguishable.
A
Um,
physicist would tell you that time is just the change of states, right? The change of matter and energy,
yeah,
or
that's
the
a pretty.
change of quantum states, right?
That's a fair way to put it. I'd say. Yeah.
Yeah. But they still hold that space time is one thing. I'd like to have that explained to me a little bit better.
It might just be a
Maybe I'll ask
semantic
Lawrence
thing because
Krauss.
I'm still having trouble finding out where time is a necessity to be included in any of this. I mean, this could just be how space is, and
Because to have any space, we would have to have. I would assume that we would have to have causation within a space, or it would basically be absolute zero, right? There would be nothing.
yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I don't
So
think that
I
we've.
think we have to a priori assume causation here. Do you think we have to?
Uh, ye, um, I would. One of my egos would say, I mean, yeah, pretty much, yeah, I agree with you that perhaps is like a Kantian a priori that we need to have is causation. But
Mhm.
also, how do you separate two things to say that? I mean, I'm going to drop this. I'm holding a nail file right now that you probably hear since my mic is apparently so sensitive. So I'm gonna drop this nail file. Again, where does the nail file stop and the air begin? I mean, everything is exchanging. I guess with this material, perhaps it
In
takes a little bit
Stephen
longer.
Wolfram's idea, it's an infinitely fast Turing machine.
Infinitely fast. What does Turing machine have to do with
Like
this?
like 3D printing infinitely fast, the air
Oh, I
and the
see.
pen
Okay.
falling at the same time. So
Right.
as the pen is falling, it's being replaced behind it by air, and in front of it the pen. So it's like the pen. is this is why Parmenides had a problem with movement, right?
Yes, I
This
do
is why
too.
they had all the Zeno's paradoxes, because these movement paradoxes, right? That's that. Obviously, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about causality and the idea of movement in philosophy because uh, they're integral to the philosophy of space and time and physics. So,
And I will do my due diligent research. I still don't see where we need to accept that time is independent of our mind to understand space, which I'm presuming and presupposing is the at least one thing we could be really confident that exists independent of us. Again, I can't be 100% sure, but I'm more confident in that than also time being lumped in with it being independent of our minds. But yeah, that's
Well, I don't know. I'd say all our best information that we have now is that space and time are the same thing.
yeah, we were just talking about
yeah.
that.
So I mean, we don't know if it's necessarily a semantic argument, but it could. There's a reality that works where I don't even need. I don't even see the necessity, Scott, to have time part of me understanding reality, quote reality. I could just see that
Oh,
that's what space is. That's just how space acts. There's a lot of space, when there's a lot of matter, that's what I'm kind of synonymous. And dude, listen, like,
but
correct me if I'm wrong. I can't wait for someone to tell me something better than what I'm saying. But this is my instinct. This is my intuition when I'm hearing Thomas talk about this. It could just be how space works, where it's super. There's a lot of matter, there's a lot of space, and time, which I think perhaps could just be a human-dependent notion that we put on to things. It's different, right? And maybe that speaks volume. The fact that it's different when you're on closer to a black hole than when you're
there's,
whatever. But yeah, go for it.
I mean, a physicist, real quick, just real quick, and I'll shut up. A physicist would say space contains matter and energy, and it is space is a property because of like dark energy and dark matter and shit. But like, uh, time is also a property because it is change, right? It is change and like it is the change in states of physical matter. You
Yep.
see what I'm saying?
Yeah. So
So
I'm gonna
like
write that down.
that's why they unify space time is because space is the container, time is is the change within the container. That's what I'm thinking about it
I
as.
have to actually say
exactly.
something real quick, Scott. Before I'm sorry, I have to respond to that. Container, I don't think is the right word, and this is what I
I
was
don't
going to write
either.
down.
I don't
I
either, and I don't know what to say. Go ahead,
I
Scott.
don't.
Let's let Scott get in.
Yeah, yeah, good idea. Sorry, go for it, Scott.
I was just going to say, like, instead of thinking about time as like anything that humans conceived of, it is just the notion of, like what Thomas said, it's like regardless of the term container or not, it's just the relative difference of things against each other, right?
Yep.
That's the only thing that we can understand as time is like how things change and how they change relative to other things.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think that is a pragmatic and useful, and it has utility when we talk like that. Again, there's just this one ego of my many that I have that is, that is begging for me to listen. That even you use the word difference there,
Hmm.
Scott,
Yep.
and I agree. My mind, my eightness sees a difference quote that we're using, and we could both epistemologically agree that perhaps we mean the same thing when we say that. Again, that could be the product of our mind making, just as time. Same thing with time. It could just be. I don't know if difference or change necessarily exists. I mean, again, perhaps another pedantic. This is the whole sophistry that I go through. Now, what I would say is, what two things are you saying are changing? And of that thing, where does that stop and the air begin?
It's
I
it's
mean,
what's what's it's not even two things changing. It's one thing changing. But
sure. So
there,
one
there,
thing, but what
yeah,
is that? Like what? Like what? Give me an example. What is the one thing that's going to change?
Well, you can look at like an air molecule, like one single molecule of oxygen in the atmosphere.
Is that the most fundamental unit of reality that you're, or
No, no,
perhaps for this thought experiment? I don't know.
you just said name one thing. So like think about like one molecule of uh, oxygen that's
Is
moving
O2
through the atmosphere.
is O2 indestructible, or can it
No,
be? Can it?
Well,
Can that
we can
itself be
reduce it
changed?
down. We can reduce it down to its leptons and quarks and
Right.
fermions and stuff, right?
Mhm.
Right. Okay.
yeah, but
So,
what
yep. Go for it.
you'd still just be getting down to like whatever this thing is. But if you the reason why we see time the way we do, or like to have like the quote unquote illusion of time, or a lot of people refer to it as the error of time, because it's a recognition of changing states. That's literally it, in
Hmm.
my personal opinion, right?
Like temperature is a big thing now. That
Yeah,
is a big thing that I think of when you say
I'm
that.
asking Kraus this question tomorrow.
yeah, because like I mean, like what would happen if nothing changed? Like right, like imagine every quark, every smallest molecule in the entire universe just stopped moving. What would happen?
Oh, I have no idea. Everything would. I mean, are you saying every molecule?
Everything,
All, 10
everything.
to the 88,
Yep,
10
everything
to the power of
just
88
stop.
to there.
Yep, stop moving.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I guess, I mean, we'd freeze is my first initial reaction, right? Like we freeze.
The
Not
absolute
in.
zero is the cessation of movement
Oh,
of
yeah,
all
yeah,
matter and
yeah.
energy.
Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. Absolute
Hmm.
zero, perhaps.
Hmm.
So,
So,
So
like, here's my thought of why space
why
time's the
won't
same
we
thing.
time?
Can you have space without time? Can you? Let's not say container. Let's say
Hmm.
let's say substrate. A
that's such a good
substrate.
question.
Let's just say it's a substrate. Okay, why not?
Okay.
Uh, Containing matter and energy. We have to use the word container. Fuck, I don't even know how to. I
No, I
can't get
mean
away
that's
from the word
fine.
container.
That's you could use it for this. That's
Yeah.
fine.
So yeah, you've. Can we have space without time?
Um,
Can we have
I
space
I
without anything changing inside of it?
I thought your question initially was, could we have time without space?
Well, sure. Answer that one first. Can we have time without space?
That's almost kind of like what I think of when I tell myself perhaps that the universe is infinite and eternal.
Right.
That outside, quote, if that's a thing, outside of space, I don't know what that would be honestly, but we're
I know
using
exactly what you mean. You're good
um,
to hedge your
perhaps before the
caveats.
Big Bang, we could say, if the Big
Yeah.
Bang was a thing. I don't know. People have different ideas of what that may have looked like, but I think time, if it does exist independently of our mind, perhaps exists, yes, as noumena, and I'm saying would exist also independent of space. Space, in that thought experiment, in that category, I don't think. Well, I don't know. I mean, I could definitely be creative and romantic and think of perhaps convince myself of a reality where there's no time. I mean, I guess we just said one where it's absolute zero and all atoms stop. I mean,
Yeah.
perhaps that. Yeah, I could see that. But if time does exist independent of, and Wolfram is right, where there's time particles also and
Yeah.
graviton particles
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
space
Space
particles,
particles. Yeah.
then yeah, I mean, if it's independent of our mind, then I think I could see both of them existing also independent of each other. Those space and time.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I can see that. I just. It kind of makes it to me like the space is the space where causation happens, and causation is time. So time is what shows us that space exists, right? So like you can't. I don't even know how to think about it without causality.
that's a good way of putting it.
It's ripping my mind to pieces because this is a very complex topic, but I love it. I love this is what challenges my mental horsepower right here. This kind of stuff. I love it.
Capital D dialectic is what I like to
Yes,
call it.
capital D dialectic. This shit's not easy.
It's art.
It is. So I've been talking for a fucking long time now. I don't want to fucking bore everybody to tears, but we've got 17 people hanging out. That's awesome. Love you guys. Hope you're having
Maybe we
fun
could
listening to
encourage
us.
some people to call in. I know Daniel.
Sure.
I don't know if Daniel's still here, but he seemed hot to trot on the mic. Maybe I don't
Oh,
know
I
if
didn't see. I didn't see. I was reading a bunch, guys.
I
I'm
don't think he
sorry. I do
called
that
in,
all the
but
time.
he's been. Yeah, I've been reading the comments a little bit. I got you on
Well,
that.
go ahead and you can read some of the comments if you want to,
Um.
or Daniel, you can call in if you want to.
Yeah.
It's whatever.
Whoever can call in. Carnal says, then how is it expanding if the universe is infinite? I mean, that's a good question. I think personally that if infinity is a thing, I think that we always will underestimate infinity. So, I mean, it's almost like God in a sense where, I mean, it's almost blasphemy to say that the universe can't do something because, I mean, if it's infinite, doesn't that mean it can do everything? But I don't know. And then let's see. Syncope says change is the only sign of life. I suppose you could poetically make, yeah, I mean, I guess I can't see much wrong with that statement alone. Um, if if things just stopped and changed and happened, I guess as we laid out, uh, technically we have a name for that. It's absolute zero, and i.e. also time stops. That is our hypothesis. Obviously, I don't think anyone's experimented that and gotten the gold scientific standard of empirical evidence for that. But yeah. And then Colonel says Earth is also expanding. Well, interesting. I guess that's probably because it's within space, within the dark matter, the dark energy. However, I'm not sure how great of a quick interpretation that is. Expanding contributes to a beginning. I think you're just assuming there, Carnal, that expanding equals a beginning. I don't see an issue with expanding also. I don't know though. I mean, if
This is
you can call
Perry.
in and make an argument for that if you want. Yeah, go for it, Scott.
Well, Perry, what physicists will say is they'll say the local universe, right? And that just
Yep.
means what we
The
have.
local presentation of our universe is like what 92 trillion light years long, something like
Yep.
that.
And that is the Big Bang. But the idea is that the
Right.
universe is even bigger than that. Like right, like
Well, yeah, there's shit that's been accelerating since the Big Bang, so it's so far away that we wouldn't even be able to fathom it by now. You know what I mean?
I think I just have the pride and the hubris where I think that I can just use the infinite regress argument and like as if it's infallible. Obviously, I don't think that, but what happened before the locality of the Big Bang
yeah,
was,
that's
like I said, the outside of space. If that makes any sense going on
yeah,
there,
that's something we have no
we
answer
have
for.
no idea exactly.
Yeah, and we never will. That's
But okay, okay. So then maybe Carnal, you're right. Where it's a sufficient or a necessary condition, perhaps is the better Aristotelian word, where if something is expanding and we can make that intelligible, then that means, again, I don't think we could be certain, but necessary perhaps, yeah. I have like the hubristic, well, what was before that? And then what was before that? I feel as though that's on some high ground here, but call in if you want, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I have more stuff I can cover. I just didn't want
Yeah,
to stop
definitely.
people from having
having a convo.
I'm going to spark up
a
this
good
joint,
convo.
so go
Call,
ahead and...
call
Spark it
in,
up. There
call
is.
in, jive ass turkeys. Let's get it going.
I've on Scientific American, on Scientific American, which is a really well trusted site. I like it a lot. They have a "What is space time really made of?" article. I'm thinking about reading it. It's kind of long. I guess I don't. We'll see. It's a little long. It's
Oh,
a few
Scott.
essays long.
Scott, I picked up my book from the library, Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, like you suggested.
Nice,
So,
nice. Oh yeah, dude, it's a good one.
Oh no, dude. This gets way too deep. I can't read that. People would have to have visuals for this. Even me, like some of this is pretty heavy. Let's just understand that as of October 28th, 2022, a theoretical Paquette, Stephen Paquette, a theoretical physicist at the University of Washington, is not alone at all in thinking about this strange kind of dimensional transmutation. A growing number of physicists working in different areas of the discipline with different approaches are increasingly converging on the profound idea that space and perhaps even time are not fundamental.
Yeah.
Instead, space and time may be emergent. They could arise from the structure and behavior of more basic components of nature that we don't see yet. At the deepest levels of reality, questions like where and when simply may not have answers at all, like in the quantum. Uh, she also he also says, "quote We have a lot of hints from physics that space-time, as we understand it, isn't the fundamental thing." Paquette says. So, this is the philosophy of space and time changing, right? It may not even be called space and time anymore, so they would have to change the metaphysics of it, right? They would
so
have to change the idea of the metaphysics.
I now have an article that I can confirm my bias with. Thank you. I'm just kidding.
No, you're good.
Fucking parents.
I'm going to post that in chat as well, the scientific amendment, because we're here to be academic, ladies and gentlemen. This is tangent time, but we're also on torture time too. We're always on torture time,
We're
but
always in torture.
always torturing myself. That's why it's called torture time, by the way. If anybody wanted to know, I torture myself constantly with all this fucking information, so I wanted to share that with you. Share the torture a little bit, just a little, because this is how we learn. It's how we learn, and some people don't learn sitting in a fucking classroom, just staring at a board all day.
No,
So
I like learning on my own.
yeah, I like learning through conversation with other people who are interested in the truth and learning. So
When you certainly don't learn by taking it easy, you got to challenge yourself. Get those fucking
mentally, that's correct. I mean, you do not learn shit by just being like, oh yeah, I accept
Yep.
whatever that is.
Yep.
Whatever, just whatever. I mean, just bullshit and myths, and let's throw some science fiction in there. Fuck it.
Dude, of course Kim Kardashian's hot.
I have no comment.
I was going to say that that's objectively true, but then, yeah, Thomas is gay, so obviously it can't be objectively true.
Can't be objectively true. I'm sorry, you lose. So let's are any callers in the queue? I can't see here.
No, unfortunately.
Okay. No, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. So now we talk about the direction of time. This is where, so the problem of the direction of time arises directly from two contradictory facts. Firstly, the fundamental physical laws are time reversal invariant. So that means that, like, if you took a film of all of reality and then rewound it, it would still be a physical process. It would be the time reversal would not change it. Oh my god, it deals with variance and invariance, and that was something that I didn't cover. So I'm not going to say that. I'm just going to say our experience of time at the macroscopic level is not time reversal invariant. Oh my god, I'm going to have to go explain that. Shit. So let's just talk about it, you and me. I won't go into variance and invariance right now. What do you think about the direction of time? Can it only be one way?
I was just listening to something earlier. I forget what it was. But supposedly, and I'm just taking this on authority, I have no idea the evidence behind it. I don't think there's much empirical evidence, which is the whole issue with string theory. And most of other quantum stuff, we don't have the tools necessary to test it. So we just use the math and we extrapolate from that. But something within the laws of physics of string theory says that, yes, we can, that the past and the future exists as well as this present. And again, hopefully, I'm just like trying to spark maybe
No,
some
you're fine.
ideas from someone
You're
else
fine.
that may know more about string theory or supersymmetry. It's one of those that
I
say
mean,
yes, we
it's
can see both.
membrane theory, string theory, the holographic principle, all of that stuff is all tied together. It all deals with string theory, so that strings vibrate inside of bosons and quarks and leptons, and these strings can be changed, and you could change the fabric of space time if you could change these strings, and there's all kinds of stuff to it.
I mean, I guess where oh, sorry, Scott, were you going to say something? Or did I hear Scott? I thought I heard someone. Maybe not.
Scott's being antisocial.
No, that was Thomas. I'm just soaking it in right now.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, it makes me like want to tangent to Zeno's paradox, where the present, quote present, exists in between the past and the future, and the past and the future are both non-existent. So it's that exist in between two non-existent things.
Mm-hmm.
But that is a tangent, like I said, and
so so we know about entropy and the direction of time, right? The arrow of time, that entropy is enacting on the closed system of the universe, and eventually it will go from a state of complete entropy to spread completely out. Then it'll just be heat. Everything will just be heat and black holes, right? Am I correct in that, Scott?
Yeah, it's like even past the black holes, it'll basically just be nothing. It'll just be static.
Yeah, I guess the heat, does the heat turn to something else? The heat turns to static.
No information.
Heat, like it doesn't even have a thing anymore, right? There's no.
Oh, I guess it would be in thermal equilibrium, so it wouldn't be hot or cold. It would just be.
Yep,
yeah. Okay, so yeah. So we know that there's like a cause and effect solution to the direction of time thing. We see a cause and there's an effect that gives us a forward direction into the future. If I'm about to get to presentism and eternalism, so we'll get to that in just a second. But it is important to cover the direction of time and thinking, why can't it be backwards, or why can't it be branching off, and all these different things that we've talked about before. I don't know how to. I'm assuming that because of causality and because of the thermodynamics and entropy, that the direction of time will always be in one direction, whether it's an infinite branching amount of directions in like a many worlds interpretation or something like that. Maybe so, but I would assume that we all agree that it's traveling in a direction towards some form of. I mean, even if heat death doesn't happen, cause and effect shows that there are things before other things, right? Which I'm about to explain in the flow of time. I guess I could just go ahead and explain it. The problem of the flow of time, as it has been treated in analytic philosophy, owes its beginning to a paper written by J.M.E. McTaggart, in which he proposes two temporal states. The first series, which means to account for our intuitions about temporal becoming, or the now, is called the A series. The A series orders events according to their being in the past, present, or future, in order and in comparison to each other. The B series eliminates all reference to the present and the associated temporal modalities of past and future, and orders all events by their temporal relations of earlier than and later than. What do you think about that?
No.
That would still be referencing a preference, though, right? Or a present.
Yeah.
No reference point is a hard thing for me to imagine. Something that has no reference point. I guess when we're talking about this, especially, it almost makes me think of Leibniz and his infinite monads.
Yeah, that was mentioned in this article.
Humans, for sure, whether it's true or not, definitely follow the A series, and we live our lives essentially according to that A series that you said.
And I would say because of causality, that it's. I mean, we can't ever really define what the present is because the moment the present you observe it, it's gone.
Right. It's
So
already
it's
gone.
the past, right? So, and the past can be misremembered, and the future we don't know. So really, there, you can make an argument that philosophically, at least within one's own head, there might not be any such thing as time. Uh, because the
Exactly.
past and the present, and the future can't be proven to all be exactly as we think of them.
See,
Uh,
but then that means there is a time, and what time is it?
Game
It's
time.
now.
Molly Percocet time.
It's now, motherfucker.
It's now, motherfucker.
But now was just then. But it's
I know
gone.
Yeah, he
it
knows.
just
He
happened.
knows.
I know, it just happened.
But wait, what about now? Not. No.
Yeah, good luck with that one. That's an infinite regress, trying to find the present. Trying to find the present moment.
I wonder
Infinite
if
regress.
that's what Russell was thinking when he made his 5-second or 5-minute thing
Yeah.
where we were just born, or we just came into existence 5 minutes ago with all these memories.
Yep. That's one of the radical skeptical scenarios that is the hardest to defend against. Because it could be the case, right? So it's always so. In many ways, the debate between these two views that I just told you, the A series and the B series, can kind of be seen as like a continuation of the early debate between the view of absolute time by Isaac Newton and the view of relative time by Leibniz. You know, so A series and B series flow of time is important to understand, at least in that sense. Now let's talk about presentism and eternalism. According to presentism, time is an ordering of various realities. At a certain time, some things exist and others do not. This is the only reality we can deal with, and we cannot, for example, say that Plato exists because at the present time he does not.
Correct.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And an eternalist, on the other hand, holds that time is a dimension of reality on a par with the three spatial dimensions, and hence that all things, past, present, and future, can be said to be just as real as things in the present. According to this theory, then, Plato really does exist, though we must still use special language when talking about somebody who exists at a distant time, just as we would use special language when talking about something far away. Interesting.
Yeah.
So I would say that we are presentists, right?
So what I would say about that is we create our language. It almost seems like that's a semantic thingy that's going on there. We create our language because it's useful to talk in the A series. We didn't evolve over time to talk in the B series, but if we did, maybe it'd be easier to understand. But it just seems like,
This is interesting. Real quick,
yeah.
philosophical presentism is the view that only present entities exist, or equivalently, that everything is present. According to presentism, there are no past or future entities. In a sense, the past and the future do not exist for presentists. Past events have happened or have existed, and future events will happen or will exist, but neither exist at all since they do not exist now.
Yeah, so Zeno was a presentist.
So an eternalist, here I'll read this. Eternalism is an approach to the ontological nature of time, which takes the view that all existence in time is equally real, as opposed to presentism, or the growing block universe theory of time, the four-dimensional, block universe theory of time, in which at least the future is not the same as any other time. Some forms of eternalism give time a similar ontology to that of space, as a dimension itself, with different times being as real as different places, and future events are already there, in the same sense other places are already there, and that there is no objective flow of time. Did you hear me?
Yep.
That's
So which one of those sounds the most acceptable?
The presentist one, of course, does. And that's what I'm saying. Like, we evolved with our language to talk in the presentist type of format. But imagine a universe where, like, we somehow tried to make words intelligible for, like, maybe we could be, when we're talking about Plato, we're talking about him in the present now, or in some different way, like in some eternalist way, not present way, but where, Plato exists and he says, or something. I mean, obviously, I'm using presentist terms right now, but yeah.
But think about it like this, Perry. Like maybe it's not that like the evolution of words is all that important. Think about like the 30 million years it took for us to evolve to where we are now, right? Did that evolution lead us to a point where we can recognize the world around us as it actually is?
Right. We were presentist as, as the organisms before we were using language even.
Yes.
Yeah.
Testing.
I don't know your itches.
I think Thomas.
Yes.
I think the perception is off. I think when we're thinking of time, it's either past or future. When the perception of the present should be about holding both of those perceptions at the same time,
Hmm.
and thinking.
Nibbit, did you cut out?
You're gonna have to.
Barry, did Nibbit cut out for you?
You're gonna have to retrace your steps, Nivik, and go back to the Wi-Fi spot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
He might not be able to hear
you're in a
us.
dark spot, buddy.
He might still be talking, honestly, and he can't hear us because the connection isn't there to have the hearing.
He's just going to come in a second and finish up his sentence.
Yep.
And we'll be like, "Yep."
Nivik, we're waiting on you. If you can hear us, Nivik, we're waiting on you, buddy. Oh, the connection issues.
Maybe I'll read some of these comments. Travis said to reverse time, you must harness full control of the system. Like we'd have to be omnipotent or something.
Yeah, you would have to be omniscient. You would have to be Laplace's demon.
Carnal says plasma is theorized, but the Voyager probe said otherwise. Did they not? Time is relative to observer and not shared beyond our solar system. How do you know that, Carnal? Do you have some system outside of our solar system to confirm that, or is this just a presumption? How would we be able to determine if our conscious recycles and does not die with our corporeal forms?
Yeah,
we
I can
could
see.
be in some cycle. Yeah, that's a good
I
thought.
can see that. It's a good thought.
Are we all just DNA evolving as part of a larger whole, aggregating all knowledge for a central entity? Maybe we're all pantheist.
Maybe no. Well, maybe that's the point of natural selection, is to eventually have this one fucking DNA molecule. You know what I mean? That is like perfect.
The perfect DNA molecule. Yeah.
The perfect DNA strand or molecule that just has perfect existence on planet Earth or something. I don't know.
Well, there could be no God, but like some sort of greater being that like made a shitload of universes just to like cultivate that one piece of DNA from every one of these.
Yeah, from all the planets.
Yeah, we could be just a simulation. Yeah,
go through all the shit that we go through.
That was the point of all this suffering, is just to make this one perfect strand of DNA that this universal being just goes around and takes from the planets that already have.
I mean, that's still more likely than any theology on display. And then lastly, Carnal says, but according to But according to creationists, that is where we stand from now, not moving towards. So, he also said, I didn't read this. Like bits of data, we need to evolve to a higher level of accuracy with our communication methods. I agree.
Yeah.
And then lastly, he said, but according to creationists, that is where we started from, not moving towards. So, well, I thought there's always the telos aspect of Christianity where everything's already predestined. Everything's predestined, as in Ephesians 1:11, and we're all a part of God's will. Yet we also have free will, which is a joke. But
Yeah, I don't get that one, but we'll shelve that one for the moment.
Nivik, are you there? Are you back?
I'm not gonna open up that can.
I dropped. So I was saying like the present, the past, and the future. The perception of the past and the future simultaneously.
The perception of the past and the future is simultaneous.
The perception of the past and the future in being viewed simultaneously.
So that's kind of like a little bit of what we were talking about a moment ago, like eternalism, where every moment actually exists ontologically.
Yeah,
Anybody else?
that's how it would kind of look like. Yeah.
Like a block universe. I was going to explain eternalism one more time real quick because I don't know if it's actually considered, but it says it is sometimes referred to as a block universe theory due to its description of space-time as an unchanging four-dimensional block, as opposed to the view of the world as a three-dimensional space modulated by the passage of time. So I guess through relativistically, we're in a three-dimensional space, and time is the modulation. You know what I mean, of that space. So
I hate bringing this up again, but the movie Arrival,
yeah,
when they're talking about time and they're saying the alien perception of time is different than ours, we're linear, but the alien sees all points in time simultaneously. So the woman, then they're talking about this cipher Whorf hypothesis. That's like if you start thinking in the language, you start thinking like the people of that language, and she would start to think like the aliens. So when she was thinking like the aliens, everything she did, she saw the end of it. So
yeah, she was looking at the whole breadth of time, right?
yeah, so it's kind of like whatever is being done. The whole perception from the beginning to the final point was viewed. So there's no separation from the beginning to the end. So when she saw the beginning, she saw the end.
Right.
So
I'll
it's
show
just
you.
that's present. Never mind.
You got to go for work. Okay. Harry, did you want to add anything?
That sounded too deeply, didn't it? Or
No. No, I just didn't have a specific response to it. It didn't sound stupid or anything. Harry, did you want to comment?
I would rather. I see Travis is up here, so I'd rather have
Oh,
him say
okay.
something.
Travis, what's up? I've been fucking looking at shit. I'm always reading stuff while I'm on this. Then I gotta forget there's people might be calling in and I'm ignoring them.
So Nivek, do you think that? I mean, surely you follow the presentist type where the past is non-existent and it happened, but it's it doesn't exist. The present exists now, and then the future doesn't exist either. It's yet to happen. I mean, do you have any issues with that worldview?
That's a
That was
good question, Neb.
that was for you, Nivek.
is the past.
You're breaking up a little bit. I don't know what you're saying.
I think things can be relative in where the past and the future can be viewed as also be viewed as the present. That's
Can also be viewed as the present. Yeah,
well, that's
yeah,
how aliens looked at it. They saw this. What we saw is a long time. It was like that was like a blink of it.
Speak more clear. I can't really hear you.
Can you hear
Not
me?
louder, just more clearly.
That's-
Okay, that's better.
Yeah, that's good.
So the aliens would have a different perspective of time. Why?
He dropped. Oh, he's having trouble.
He's back up.
He's having trouble.
Aliens would have a different perspective. How so?
Hello.
Yep.
Hello.
You hear
Sorry,
us?
I'm dropping in and out where I'm at. It's back.
You're okay. So how would aliens have a different perspective of time? Like, what would that look like if you could differentiate that?
No, I was just saying in the movie, what would be like a distant past and future to us, to the aliens, it would be viewed as the present because it would be like a blip.
Because they're looking at all time at once. Is that what you're saying?
So they could
maybe
be
what's long to
eternalists.
us would be short to them.
Okay. So they could be eternalists, like Perry's saying. Every moment in existence exists right now. Right?
I think maybe perception of time can be different. And my point
From what?
is like time. Well, our perception of time the perception of time and what's happening in the moment can be different to a bat or to a dog.
Well,
Like
sure, but we're talking about humans. We're talking about
well,
humans.
So I don't think Nivek is arguing saying that the alien could be eternalist. I think that he's saying more so, kind of like how in the Bible 1,000 days for us is a day for God. It's a different scaling, just as we're different scaling from bats and ants and these other animals. Unless
On arrival, they were all seeing the breadth of time is like this same presentist thing. I think is what Nivek is getting at.
So yeah, I mean, I still can't tell if he's in the the present camp or if he's in the eternalist camp.
I don't know.
So Nivek, are you saying that it's like a scaling thing? How we're different from bats? Like it's kind of like a different scale. Same thing with the aliens. It's a different scale, or they see. Yep, go for it.
what's happening? Time is a measurement of change and reaction.
Okay.
With humans can be different relative to a dog. He can have the sense in where he hears further down. He knows what's going on in that point in time and moment. He'll smell what's coming at that point in time. Humans.
We didn't catch that last. I know it's frustrating, Nivek, but for some reason you're cutting out on some of the parts you're saying.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you now. It's a little better.
I said that time is a measurement of change of what is measurement of change and in what's going on in the environment, and a human perception at a point in time of what's going on in the environment can be different from a dog. A dog can have the sense in where he hears further and we're not picking up on what's going on. He can smell who and what's coming. We're not in that state of awareness relative to the dog.
So you think
Our perception of time would be.
does time move different? Nivek, does time move
Go ahead.
differently for the dog?
Or if you're in a
No, I was
car, you
asking you
have
a question. I said, does time?
if it moves differently.
Sorry. Yeah.
I'm
I think
my
there's a
my.
delay. Sorry about
I'm
that.
not. Sorry.
It's okay.
A difference that is there of what's going on with an animal relative to a human. The awareness of what's
So
going
can I
on is
ask
the
you a
perception.
question? Can I ask
The
you?
awareness of what's going on is the perception of time.
Okay. So it's a perception of time, but ontologically, do you think that time moves differently in some physical way differently for animals?
Yeah.
Okay, how would we know that?
Okay, because a human being, because their brains are different. They can probably pick up on the their perception of the present, because they can take in information more than an animal. They can understand the
Okay.
recent and
Just
the probability
Hang
outcome
on,
of the
slow down,
future.
Scott. Slow down.
What's going on?
just real quick, Nivek. What Thomas is asking
I am.
is no. Just let me say this real quick. What Thomas is asking is, do you think animals experience time? So, like the way that they see time might be different. I think everybody can agree with that.
Yeah,
But
I'm saying that. I'm real quick, Scott. I'm saying that yes, they can have a different perception of time, but let's think about it this way, Nivik. Can it be 1 o'clock for me and 2 o'clock for my dog?
I understand. That's what I'm trying to answer.
Okay.
And I was saying, like, because humans they take in information and they process that logically in cause and effect outcome. Our view of the present can be different because we're rational. We're taking information of what recently happened and of the past and what recently is going on in the present and what's recently going to happen in the future. I'll give you an example. So if you're in your car, right, and you have a bunny in your back seat, and you see you're driving fast, for example, and okay, so it's the road's very slick and it's icy. You see a pile up. Your perception of what's going on would be different in that moment in time would be different than the rabbit because
Okay,
you're
let Scott respond after you finish. Go
okay.
ahead. Scott, are you still with us?
Oh yeah. So see, like, let's say there's an accident on the road. There's a human and there's a rabbit that sees it. They both perceive
There's a
these
rabbit in the
things
backseat of the car. Your state of awareness is different than a rabbit.
hold on. But that doesn't mean that the car is not traveling 60 miles an hour down fucking I-25. Like, right, like that's the point that is trying to be made, is like there's still a fundamental moving forward of particles, right? So like light moves at the same speed no matter what, no matter who is there to perceive it or not. Whether a rabbit perceives it as fast or slow, and we perceive it or fast or slow, it doesn't matter. That's perception. What Thomas is like, and we agree with you on that, Niv. But what we're saying is like, are you trying to say that time in and of itself, that for rabbits, light moves at a slower speed than the speed
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. Yeah, that's basically what I'm asking, Nivik. I'm saying, like, can it be 1 o'clock for me? Okay, I'm in the car. The bunny's in the back seat. Can the is it 1 o'clock for me at the front of the car in my human mind? But it's not in my mind. Let's just say it's 1 o'clock in the middle of the day, and I'm driving, and I have a bunny rabbit in the back seat. Is it actually 2 o'clock ontologically for the bunny, and it's 1 o'clock ontologically for me?
No, you're all experiencing the same time.
Like the passage of
The
time?
topic is present, and I was just talking about perception of present. How it could be different.
Oh no, yeah, and we all agree. It's like you're a presentist, but you're just talking about perception.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go.
And same being.
Roboting. I know it's frustrating that you're having connection issues. It's understandable. So, like, do you understand what I'm saying, Scott? Like the
Yeah.
ontological
Cool.
nature of
Yeah.
time. Like it's not going to be 1 o'clock for me, and then the bunny is going to be 7 o'clock p.m. Like where it's actually experiencing a different ontological moment in time where the sun has rotated around the earth and it's now
Yeah,
dark. You know what I mean? Like that can't happen.
exactly.
So
Exactly.
Well,
the constants of change, I would assume, is throughout at least the observable universe. So I mean, there wouldn't just be like a cessation of that based on something being an animal. You know what I mean? And having a different
can
perception
I
of time.
interject and make another pedantic argument while I eat this donut?
Please do.
Wouldn't,
It's a donut.
based on Einstein's laws of relativity, wouldn't you and the bunny ontologically experience two different times just by the slightest smidge?
Yes. Yes, you
okay.
would. Based on the indeterminacy of the quantum realm, yes.
Yep.
Just making sure and being pedantic.
Yep.
I never understood light to be.
That's actually not that pedantic, Perry. That's actually a pretty legitimate question
Good.
for physicists.
That positively reinforces me. Thank you.
Physicists are going to ignore those indeterminacies, but quantum physicists aren't.
Like so.
Like engineers are going to ignore those. Yeah, engineers are going to ignore those indeterminacies.
Not all engineers, right? It's like some engineers, if you're doing
like a chemical engineer, no, yeah, they're going to use quantum chemistry. So
also like satellites and stuff, where you're like using like you have to understand a lot of shit to know like the different time dilations between. Yeah, it gets thick.
Yes, it gets deep. That's why I'm glad that I don't work at NASA.
Yeah.
I do a lot of programming, shitloads of programming, and like very little payoff.
Yeah.
Shitloads of systems analysis programming, fucking putting together all these huge project. Oh my god. Some people be like, "Oh, I'd love to work at NASA." Be like, "No, man, that's like low budget, and they want a lot out of you." They're just now sending people up to the fucking moon again. I mean, goddamn, you know. So, so I'm pretty much Perry. I've pretty much gone over everything I can within the generalities of the philosophy of space and time. There's a couple of other things that I didn't cover, like variance and invariance and covariance, and like historical frameworks, things like the causation solution and the thermodynamic solution to the direction of time. There's a couple of other ones, and then of course we talked about the flow of time, the A series and the B series, presentism and eternalism. What else? What else is interesting in Western philosophy that I haven't covered with relation to this? Is there anything you've come across?
Let's see.
We can talk. We can talk more about the physical definitions of time, like in classical mechanics and time dilation and all that. You know, relativistic versus Newtonian, relativistic versus quantization. You know.
Yeah, I'm thinking. We did cover quite a bit. We're at the 2-hour mark.
Oh, I love it. I think this is one of my favorite shows I've ever had, actually.
Let's see. Electromagnetism, gravity, the two nuclear forces. These are all working in sync within space-time. Light travels along this electromagnetic field at a rate that is independent of any observer. Though once the observer, just to say that opposite, that once the observer starts moving quicker, time slows down. This is time now seems to be dependent on the speed of light, and perhaps that is, I don't know if that's evidence for or against the argument that time exists independently. It seems as though relative to the observer is and that reminds me, Carnal was wanting me to read a message of his that talked about relativity. He said time is only relevant to the observer within their own introcosm, their own reality. Yes. And that's essentially what I'm getting at.
Yeah, our perception of time definitely is that, for sure.
So, if that's the case, let me just run this dialectic out to see if it's for or against the argument. If time exists independent of the human mind, why is it that time is different when I'm moving faster than the snail next to me?
It is weird to think about it, but it's that ontological nature of time being causality. There's not a different causality. It's all the same cause and effect that's been going on since the Big Bang, right?
Yeah, the reasons that's the case is because time is an emergent property of something else, right?
That's what people think right now, is that time is the emergence of like space and matter and energy all interacting, right?
Exactly. Yes, that's what I think.
So let's see what this says. We're going to read about space-time real quick, okay? Time has historically been closely related with space, the two together merging into space-time and Einstein's special relativity and general relativity. According to these theories, the concept of time depends on the spatial reference frame of the observer and the human perception, as well as the measurement by the instruments such as clocks and... excuse me, I'm sorry, I read that sentence wrong. I apologize. According to these theories, the concept of time depends on the spatial reference frame of the observer and the human perception, as well as the measurements by instruments such as clocks, are all different for observers in relative motion. For example, if a spaceship carrying a clock flies through space at very nearly the speed of light, its crew does not notice a change in the speed of time on board their vessel because everything traveling at the same speed slows down at the same the same rate around them, including the clocks. However, to a stationary observer watching the spaceship fly by, the spaceship appears flattened in the direction it is traveling, and the clock on board the spaceship appears to move very slowly to the outside observer. So it says, on the other hand, the crew on board the spaceship also perceives the observer as slowed down and flattened along the spaceship's direction of travel, because both are moving at very nearly the speed of light relative to each other. Because the outside universe appears flattened to the spaceship, the crew perceives themselves as quickly traveling between regions of space that, to a stationary observer, are many light years apart. This is reconciled by the fact that the crew's perception of time is different from the stationary observers. What seems like seconds to the crew may be hundreds of years to the stationary observer. In either case, however, causality remains unchanged. The past is the set of events that can send light signals to an entity, and the future is the set of events to which an entity can send light signals.
Yes, this is perfect. So
Let me say that again. The past in physics, in Einstein's relativity, the past is the set of events that can send light signals to an entity. The future is a set of events to which an entity can send light signals.
Okay, so
Go
this
ahead.
this is great because the clock analogy, but the clock experiment tells us that it's not just the observer and the human mind perceiving this, because it's actually affecting the clock also.
Yeah, it's ontological. It's not just mind dependent. Yeah.
So this goes back to what's saying that time is an emergent property of space, perhaps, is now. Now, the question that I would raise is it an emergent property or is it an emergent concept that comes from our, I mean, isn't it still just space? It's still just space. This is just how space acts. And we're calling it time because it's,
That's
again,
kind of what
helpful.
it's saying, though. That's kind of what relative Einstein is saying, is that it's a three-dimensional manifold of space, and it's being what did they say, warped? What did they say? Fucking Christ!
I want to hear your thoughts on what I just asked, Scott.
Remember.
If you have anything that comes to your mind when I ask that, like, is it an emergent property, like you said, ontologically, or is it just an emergent concept that we come up with?
Well, to me, it does seem like an emergent property because we have proven the clock experiment, right? So
that can still just be space, though. Can't that still just be the? Why are we adding this whole time?
But that's the point of Einstein's. That's why Einstein calls it space time. He's saying they're the same thing.
Same thing. Good. Okay.
Yep. They are one and the same. In our experience of time, like the reason why it seems to be like you can have time dilation and stuff like that is because it is an emergent property of the bodies reacting in space. So everything is because the nature of relativity, time is not like
The three-dimensional manifold of space is changing, and that measurement is time. Is that what you're talking? That emergent measurement of the manifold of space itself changing is time.
Is
right?
time. Yep, exactly.
Okay. It seems like perhaps Einstein was inspired by.
Oh no, go ahead, sir.
I was going to say it seems like he was inspired by Kant trying to marry these two ideas, where people like me are trying to dichotomize them and say it is it either or. He's saying, well, I mean, maybe I'll have to go more into the semantics of his definition of it all, but if it's just the same thing, again, I still, perhaps it's just my doubling down where I include time. It seems as though we could just say space, and it's still 3D, maybe, is somewhere where I'm going, where it's still 3D, and us saying 4D is now incorporating our concepts. Again,
4D would be that block universe of eternalism, right? Where time is like another dimension, like length with their height.
In this
Breaking
concept.
up here.
Oh, sorry.
You're good now.
You're
good now.
what are your thoughts on change within this eternalist concept or idea, camp, whatever? Can change still happen in this? What did we say about that? Can change still occur in this eternalist universe?
In the block universe,
Yeah, or no?
let me read about it. I don't think so. I think it would. Hold on, I'm an idiot. I closed it down like a dummy. I had it open because I was. So it is sometimes referred to a block time or block universe theory due to its description of space-time as an unchanging four-dimensional block, as opposed to the view of the world as a three-dimensional space modulated by the passage of what we call time.
Gotcha. So no, it's not. It doesn't. It can't change.
Yeah, it says some
Unchanging.
forms of eternalism give time a similar ontology to that of space as its own dimension, with different times being as real as different places.
So change is necessary for time,
For
or
presentism, yes.
or is time necessary for change? It's one of those.
I think causality is within the framework of whatever space-time is. I think it allows it to have time. I mean, with it, there is no time without causality, and there is no causality without time.
It's
Right.
a measurement of change.
So,
A
so
measurement.
change is causality. One thing causing another thing to change states.
Right.
That's it. So
But
you're right, Nivik. You're right.
But we're also, I mean, if we can use modus ponens real quick. If
Yep.
change equals time, and
Change, thus time.
change thus time, and if time equals space, then change equals space. But I thought the 3D, or maybe now I'm just presupposing that when we get to space, it's static, so we can
They're not
have
separate.
change within.
They're together. With the measure, if there's movement in matter, if the time is a measurement of change of matter, that matter changing would be there's it would change it has to include space. The change in
You think space and time are one thing, Nivik?
yes, it is because you can't have an effect of change of matter without it also affecting the change in space.
So time can't exist independently of space and change.
No,
That's what physicists would probably agree with Nivik. Most practicing physicists would agree with Nivik. I think a lot of
Makes sense.
theoretical physicists are in this realm of, and Donald Hoffman as well are in this realm of, hey, obviously there's a more reductionist ontology of space-time. That's actually not fundamental. Space-time comes from this thing, right?
and give
But no, most average physicists are gonna say what Nivik just said.
Can I give an
So
example? Because we're talking about, but like you're moving quick, but you're really not because speed is relative.
yeah, we talked about that a second ago. Yeah, for sure.
So you can't say you're moving quicker. Like you know what I mean? It's like because it has to be relative to something else in space.
Yeah.
So you
Were you listening when I read off the Einstein's relativity, the spaceship example? That's what we were just talking about, bud.
yeah. I'm just going off of his using the snail. He's saying that he's moving quicker than the snail. Let's say you and the snail are out in space, and you were supposedly moving quicker past the snail. How do you know it's not the snail moving away from you? You
Well,
need
you would have to have a reference point. I
exactly.
agree. You couldn't just be in the middle of space with no planets or anything and expect to see who's in front of who. It wouldn't work like that, you know. Um, but of course, we live in a universe full of shit, so of course we would always have some reference point.
Yeah, the
At
snail could
least, unless there's just like two people walking out around in the anyway. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
you could be accelerating away from the snail. It could be reversing away from you.
Yeah. We do know that two things can travel away from each other in space. You know what I mean? That's shown from like satellites and trips to the moon and stuff like that. So, um, But time dilation is a big thing, and so is everything that you brought up a minute ago is dead on. A physicist is going to say space time is one thing, and you can't have causality or causation without time. There is no change in matter or energy if there is no time or causality. So change can't exist without causality, and causality can't exist without time. And it seems as though they're all tied together in some intricate way. Uh,
Thomas,
God, these linguistic problems.
you could go back in the past and change the future, no?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, technically, if you went back into the past and time is one single arrow like a line, then yeah, you're right.
No, what I'm saying is a lot of the things like past determines the future. Like if something happened in the past, there's going to be a cause. There's going to be a deterministic cause in the future.
Oh, yeah, you're talking about determinism. Yes, I
Let me
agree with you.
let me
Yeah.
finish. So what I'm saying is that if a person learns of a certain truth of the past that they didn't know, that new form of knowledge that they come across could make them behave differently in the future, in the present.
Mm,
Therefore changing the future, because sometimes the past isn't what we know it to be. To know it to be, sometimes there could be lies and things that aren't true, and
oh, yeah, I agree with that.
but you can come to a conclusion of, oh, this didn't really happen, that happened, and because of that newfound information, it could determine you to behave differently.
Yeah, I mean, you're just talking
No,
about
I
things.
understand that. I thought you
I'm
were
not
talking
talking about
about
getting a
deter.
time machine and
Hang
going
on.
back in the past.
Slow down, slow down. I kind of thought that's what you were going for. Go ahead,
Right.
Perry.
Yeah, no, it sounded like you were talking about time travel here, and I mean, we could talk about time travel if you want, but it
Yeah,
seems like
we're done with the lecture, guys. Thanks for listening. Y'all go ahead.
seems like there's an instant paradox. And you bringing up determinism initially was I guess where I'm headed. How can, if you go back and change, I mean, you have the butterfly effect idea where you change one thing and then everything else changes. Therefore, you wouldn't even be in that spot to time travel where you were on that arrow of time.
That's correct.
So I mean, I don't know if you have some poetic way of dealing with that paradox, but
Or the fact that if you could even get back to the same point in time, you could never quantumly line it up. You know what I mean?
This
You
is
would
the
have to have some kind of like quantum Heisenberg compensator or something to stop you from coming back at the exact. Like, what if you came back
exactly.
a picosecond too early and like you merged with yourself, like
Well,
inside of
I
yourself, like you know what I mean? Like,
I think quantum mechanics tells us that if you rewind the tape, it will not unfold the way that it is now. It will be different. If you roll back the tape, the branches will branch out different. I think because of that exact thing that you just said, the uncertainty principle.
That's not the way I'm looking at it. I'm
So
looking at
yeah,
it.
you were talking about lies. Like someone can lie. I mean, yeah, we could figure out what actually happened, and someone can lie about a past event, but ontologically, that thing still happened. Whatever is the case,
in
regardless of that.
classical mechanics, you can roll the nomological determinism out, right? But you're talking about in quantum mechanics, you're saying
Supposedly,
that
yeah.
it's all probabilities, so it could have laid out a different way.
I've heard this a couple times from a couple different
Yeah,
places.
we talked about the many worlds hypothesis and like the problem with like decoherence and stuff like that when we talked about determinism. Remember that
No, but
vaguely?
that's
Okay.
that's something that I'll obviously look into,
Okay.
decoherence and determinism.
Yeah. So you can look at the many worlds hypothesis and decoherence, and you can look at the fucking slit wave experiment and all this stuff that can show us that these quantum indeterminacies actually might be determined because it's a realm of determined possibilities. So maybe if we did roll the tape all the way back, the quantum fluctuations and state changes and computations would all roll out the exact same way based on all the probabilities, or you would have many different ones almost touching, like infinitely close together. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean that makes just as much sense. I mean, if anything, that makes more sense that that would be the case. So I obviously have I want to figure out what they were saying, that if you rewind, it'll be different. I'm
Go
curious.
look into that. I'll ask Lawrence about that.
I think it has to do
I'll
with the
say,
many worlds.
based on quantum. Yeah, I'll just ask him. I'll say, hey, based on quantum mechanics, do you think deterministically, if we rolled back the tape and then unrolled it again, it would turn out the exact same way?
That's a beautiful question.
Yeah, I'll ask him.
Is that so? What is that? What you were trying to say, Nevik?
Well, what I was trying to get at was that you reason things out in reverse, and you can come to a different conclusion of what happened in the past that was perceived in the present.
Yeah. Okay. We're
And
talking
based
about
off
ontology.
of that, people like that you can then therefore change the determined outcome of what would have happened based off of the false perception that people had.
See, you're trying to marry ontology and ontology like you're Plato here. I mean, whatever is the case is the case. Whatever was determined, regardless of our reasoning or thoughts behind it. You understand what I'm saying? You're bringing up this epistemological argument.
The way humans are is that they take in information and they process logical determined outcomes in a way to therefore change the outcome, the determined outcome in a way that suits them.
I don't think that they do it to what suits them. I mean, are you talking about?
Okay, so if you see a glass falling,
yeah, go for it. Glass falling.
He's probably having connection issues.
I wish he would acknowledge
the
demands that we give him, because it would help us a lot.
Yes, I agree with Perry. You need to acknowledge the steel man's, because he's trying to come at you and say in his best argument and say, is this what you think? He's trying to ask, what a steel man is. You should know what a steel man is. Perry is always trying to do that to people, so he's trying to take your best foot forward and understand what you actually mean.
He's not here to hear that, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's okay. Anyway, we were talking ontologically, and I think he was talking in some form of epistemologically, so it was just talking past each other kind of thing.
Right.
There's not too much more that we could go over. We could go over more Western philosophy of time.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of some space-time thingy that catches my mind. Trying to think of some people, maybe some more recent people. I've been watching a lot of videos. Leonard Susskind teaching and talking about black holes, and It's just great as someone who acknowledges themselves as a layman for the most part when it comes to this.
I am too.
It's just fascinating to look at the math and hypothesize how people got there, and then look at the visuals. He talks about the horizon or the surface of a black hole, the geometry with it, the heat, the temperature of it. We can't really tell what's going on because light is sent in, it's pulled in by the black hole, and we don't know if it vaporizes at the horizon, at the surface, or if it falls through. Mm-hmm. That obviously entails space-time in some way, but not probably anything worth anything.
Maybe time doesn't have to be married to space. Maybe it can just be this separate but coterminous thing, right?
That is the argument essentially that I was putting forth. So yeah, that is. I could see a reality where using that term and not use.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
Well, I think we lost. Scott, are you there? Scott, hello.
Whoa.
Hello, Scott. Okay, yeah, I can hear you. I think we lost Perry, in the middle of his
Get
sentence.
your ass up with the speakers, buddy.
We've got Niv back. Niv, we'll let you get back in just a
You
second.
too,
We've also
Jack.
got Paul here. Hello,
Get up
Paul.
here.
Good old Paul. Oh, there's Perry. His shit done fucked up.
Yeah, we got you.
Good, man.
Yeah, Brett, come up here and talk to us about the philosophy of space and time, brother. Let's get deep in the sauce. Everybody, come on up. Come on up. Dude, on up here.
Can you hear me okay on my PC?
Yes, I can hear you much
All
better.
right. There's a bit of a delay, I think, also, but I'm going to charge my phone while I continue on here.
You were going to have a question for Nivik about the Steelman, and you were saying that he wasn't answering the Steelman, so you want to continue that with Nivik? I mean, Nivik, are you back?
Sure. Yeah. I was wondering, Nivik, try to regain my thoughts on what you were saying. It seems as though we're looking at the more ontological, the reality, whatever is the case, the ding on sick, right? I think you understand what I'm saying when I say that. And you were, no? Is that what you said?
No, I wasn't following what you just said.
Oh, okay. So ontology and epistemology, these are two subcategories of philosophy. Epistemology refers to people talking, reasoning with each other, ideas, agreement, stuff like this. And ontology is like whatever is the case. So I'm holding this paperclip right now. Idealism could be the case, and it's really just my mind that is forming this paperclip. But personally, as a pragmatic, skeptical empiricist, a medium to soft empiricist, I believe that this exists independent of me. This paperclip here exists independent of me. That's ontology. I think this paperclip exists ontologically, right? So it seems like what you were saying in your argument was an epistemological thing where, oh, well, we can reason with ourselves differently, a century or two later, we can get these different interpretations and hermeneutics to these interpretive schemes, and we can know things about the past. That's what, a knowing is essentially. We have this justified belief based on the reasoning that we use with each other. But whatever you were saying, the word determined, whatever was determined in the past is determined independent of whatever we tell ourselves now or 100 years or 1,000 years from now. That will stay the same. Would you agree with that, or would you disagree with that?
Yeah.
This paperclip exists. Yeah, go for it.
I can see,
Did you hear his question, Nivik?
I think his phone may have bugged
again.
out again.
Shit.
Carnal asked a good question, which I've been wondering as well. Have we actually observed a black hole? Does anyone know this? If we have empirically...
Yes, they've taken a picture of a black hole, but it is a picture, obviously. Okay. It's recent. Yeah. It's like within the last 2 years that we've seen... I think it was a picture of Sagittarius A, which is in the center of the Milky Way. It was either that or it was one that was in some close galaxy. I can't remember. So, would you look it up real quick, Barry? Nivik, are you back with us?
You back with it? That's cool though, Sagittarius A. I'll have to switch that up.
Let me find it while y'all are talking. Okay, let me find it.
Yeah, I was wondering that too, honestly, because we first knew about it through the math, right? And so now we're looking.
Hello, I'm sorry, man. I keep dropping.
No, you're good. Did you kind of understand what I was saying?
I was
do you agree
the whole
with that?
time, and I didn't know that I dropped.
Can you not hear us either when that happens?
I hear you right now. It's just that sometimes I drop.
Yeah.
No, you're not letting. Sometimes okay. You don't let Perry finish.
It's all right. Go for it and respond to whatever you had to say. So if you remember what I said earlier, unless you want me to.
Just ask just the question that you asked at the end. Ask that one more time.
Yeah. This paperclip that I'm holding right now, assuming that it exists ontologically, independent of my mind, not epistemologically. And I mean, maybe in 100 years, I'll reason with someone, if I live that long, that I wasn't holding this paperclip. Ontologically, it still happened. It was still determined. And whatever reasoning we used with each other, that was a bit longer than I wanted to go, but go for it. Go for it, Nevik. I think there's a 15-second bug where it happens to